I'm going to be filling in for our chair, who is quite under the weather, and I hope she feels better real soon. So if we could start with roll call, Pastor Spriggs. You're muted.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Eileen Delaney.
Here.
Pastor Robert Spriggs Jr., I am present. Buki Domingos.
Here.
Thank you. Nadia Keen Ayub.
Present.
Ani Kink.
Oops, she's having problems too, I think. She's trying to get in.
Okay. Marianne Pintar.
Present.
Thank you. Tim Ware. Tim, you're muted.
Here.
Thank you. And G.I. Wilson.
Present.
All right, that concludes roll call.
Thank you. And we have a quorum. Our next agenda item is public comments. Paul, do you have, Mr. Parker, do you have?
I do. I've received at least 5 complaints for public comment, and we will go to them now.
Excuse me.
Lynn Owens, are you there?
Yes.
Okay. Lynn Owens, your 3 minutes to address the CLERB starts now. Lynn Owens, are you there?
Looks like she's muted.
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute her.
Am I unmuted now?
Ah, there you go.
There we go.
Lynn Owens, your time starts now.
Okay. I'll cut this short. Thank you for organizing and running the CPE town hall. Although I do hope that future town halls can somehow be co-sponsored by community groups. Thanks especially to Tim Ware for asking CPE a core question: who is doing this work successfully, and how can we learn and implement best practices for public safety and policing equity? Thank you, CLERB, for all you accomplish, understaffed as we know you are. Month by month, we see you nudging the Sheriff's Department and the county prisons toward greater equity and greater humanity. There is a hauntingly long way to go. As Martin Luther King said, the end we seek is a society at peace with itself, a society that can live with its conscience. Thank you for pushing in the right direction. That's all I have to say today.
Thank you, Ms. Owens. Next, we will go to Karen Remus. Ms. Remus, are you there?
I am. Thank you, Mr. Parker. Good evening, CLERB members. My name is Karen Remus. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I reside in zip code 92131. Report after report after report documents racially discriminatory policing practices by the San Diego County Sheriff's Department and unsafe conditions within our county jails. We've had the Campaign Zero report, the CPE report, the JWAC report, the new San Diegans for Justice report, and others. The data is clear. Change is desperately needed within the San Diego County Sheriff's Department, and greater oversight must be part of that change. I cannot begin to tell you how much I appreciate the hard work of Mr. Parker and the entire CLERB in trying to turn things around. But your powers must expand and reform must accelerate. I'm asking the executive officer to take action on, and the review board to place on its agenda a motion to adopt and pursue all recommendations included in the San Diegans for Justice report, attachment J to tonight's agenda. Thank you very much for your service to our county.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Mary Best. Ms. Best, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
We can. Your time starts now.
Thank you so much. Yes, my name is Mary Best, and I'm a therapist and member of the Racial Justice Coalition. First, like everyone, thank you, Paul Parker and members of CLERB. Thank you for your renewed commitment and efforts to bring transparency and accountability to the Sheriff's Department. Reading the article today in the Union Tribune and about your investigative findings, it's tragically clear how gross incompetence and egregious neglect and cover-up by the Sheriff's Department led to the death of Omar Arroyo just over a year ago. Mr. Arroyo, husband of Tammy Wilson, should be alive today. His wife called 911 for help, but like so many other family members whose loved ones have been in crisis and died in custody, Mr. Arroyo was transported 60 miles away to the county jail, booked, and died within hours, all while his wife awaited his release outside the jail and was given no information until after his death the following morning, even though she made repeated attempts to get information. No deputy involved has agreed to be interviewed. The Sheriff's Department declined to comment. The Sheriff's Department, the level of incompetence speaks to a continued blatant disregard for life. How many more must die before change is recommended in numerous reports, including the independent reports from the San Diegans for Justice, CPE, state audit? How many will be needed before these changes will be implemented and the department will undergo a systemic change? We know your work, your investigative work, can literally save lives. Thank you so much again for your work and your commitment to these families who are continuing to grieve the loss of loved ones and have yet to find justice. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Good night.
And thank you. Next, we will go to Yusef Miller. Mr. Miller.
Good evening. My name is Yusef Miller. I'm with the North County Equity and Justice Coalition and the Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego. And I request that the CLERB find sustained findings on all claims of misconduct in the case of Omar Moreno Arroyo. We see an improper arrest. We see a miscategorization of his condition. We see a neglect while in custody. We see a safety check virtually non-existent, just failure after failure after failure on this case in our community. This is a prime example of what community members go through. This man should have been ticketed and not even arrested. And we see these misdemeanor crimes where they lead to death in custody. So we look for a finding of sustained finding on all charges of misconduct in this case. Secondly, I would like to request that the CLERB has a co-sponsorship with the North County Equity and Justice Coalition and the Racial Justice Coalition on the upcoming town hall concerning the state audit report from the JLAC. And I see how, like with the CPE report, we use the CPE who were involved in that report. The North County Equity and Justice Coalition and the Racial Justice Coalition, along with our many allies, have been at the forefront of getting this report out. So we look for some cooperation from the community. 2 town halls is not an efficient way to do things. Let's make sure we involve the community on a town hall such as important as this. Lastly, I'd like to say for the CLERB to strongly consider the work of advancing the recommendations of the San Diego for Justice, their commissioned report on the CLERB. This report commissioned by Andrea St. Julian and the rest of San Diegans for Justice. We just had a press conference on it, and it was very important in the findings. It was very thoroughly done and very fair. Dr. Farrelly did a wonderful job from the University of Chicago. So we look for the CLERB to advance this Board of Supervisors to take on the recommendations and improve the already stellar work that CLERB is doing to move towards recommendations for improved investigations. Thank you very much.
And thank you. Next, we'll go to Darwin Fishman. Dr. Fishman.
Good evening, Darwin Fishman, Racial Justice Coalition, San Diego, North County Equity and Justice Coalition. Thank you. I just echo what Yusuf has shared and our other members have also shared already. It's, of course, really horrifying to read just like a regular drumbeat, these UT stories of press coverage of people that have died in custody. Then it comes out about how badly the jails are being run and this, as Mary said, gross negligence, so poorly done. And I appreciate the part that CLERB, the role you're playing and the oversight, but it's also clearly, it's very deeply entrenched in the culture, and that so many of the people that Omar Moreno Arroyo dealt with, they interacted with, basically really didn't care about his life. And short of course, dinging all of them and all of them losing their jobs, you won't be able to make a dent in that culture. And it's very frustrating because even at best, what you're doing is still just going to be a small part. And ultimately, it's got to be obviously at the top, the leadership. And we appreciate the work you're doing. And certainly we are pushing another angle at this. And hopefully our combined efforts will begin to get at this so that we don't have to read more stories about people dying in custody. The other thing I want to also just support with what Yusuf said is the town hall that you have scheduled March 22nd. We would love to co-sponsor that with you guys, and appreciate Yusuf being humble, but the whole state auditor about the in custody death came with a combination of work that Yusuf, Lori Saldana, Dave Myers, and others did together to get this on the radar. Part of it is on a basic level is that we're stuck in with San Diego with these deaths in custody is we needed state and national voice. We've done that. We've been doing that work. And I think it's important that for the town hall, not having, as was suggested, the two, where you're dividing us and the community is having a separate town hall, but us to come together and really go over this and to include the community and include the family members. You didn't have that in yours. I think it's important for the family members we work with to be included directly with a co-sponsorship and have a seat at the table. And with that, the San Diegans for Justice, I'm really glad they have the report commission for CLERB. I think ultimately it fits what Paul Parker has already suggested and what you guys are pushing for. And I think there's more room for improvement. And I'm really glad that at the press conference last week that Paul Parker was there and that you guys are open to listening to this and seeing how what the civilian oversight for the county, how it can be strengthened, just like we've been doing the work in the level of the city for San Diego. Thank you.
And thank you. Next, we will go to Natalie Nishat. Just bear with me while I get down to. Ms. Nishat, are you there?
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Your 3 minutes to address the clerk starts now.
Thank you so much. My name is Natalie Nishat. I'm from zip code 92131, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. First, I'd like to thank you, CLERB, as well for all your hard work and continuing to listen to the community. And I would uplift what has already been said tonight by my other community members as well. My comment tonight is to urge CLERB to continue pressing the SDSD to share its plans for responding to the CP results that have been mentioned tonight already too, and for CLERB to expand its oversight. In attachment I of tonight's agenda, Officer Martinez recounts CLERB's request that the SDSD present at CLERB's March 8th meeting with the department's plan to address the racial disparities outlined in the CPE. Thank you for making this request, and I encourage CLERB to continue to call on the SDSD for a specific plan and presentation with regard to the CPE, but also in future engagements. I really appreciated you guys calling on them for this. As noted in the attachment, one current policy of the Sheriff's Department is for pursuing racial equity is listening, building, and maintaining collaborative relationships with the community group. So I see no reason why they cannot answer CLERB's request here. It's fully aligned with their stated standards. But requests alone will not be enough to impart the stark changes needed, as again, my community members have addressed today. In order to increase the impact of CLERB in our county, I urge CLERB to pursue greater oversight. In particular, please integrate all recommendations included in the San Diegans for Justice report attached as well in tonight's agenda. Thank you so much for your time and work in our community and for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Next, we will go to Robin Sales. Ms. Sales, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Thank you. I come to you as a retired clinical social worker, and my 35-year career informs my comments tonight. I'm here to show support for the family of Omar Moreno Arroyo in light of the CLERB's sustained finding of San Diego Sheriff's Department wrongdoing from the time he first encountered them in his home in Julian to his ultimate death while wrongfully incarcerated. I appreciate that this body carefully considered all of the policies and statutes in place and the evidence presented to them by the careful work of the investigators and came up with so many areas of deputy wanton disregard for their own policies and the life of this man. We asked, how could this have happened? Was it related to the bias against people of color as shown in the CPE report, or to people with substance use disorders? When his wife Tammy explained the crisis to dispatch, clearly stating that he was in mental distress, why was he not taken to Palomar Medical Center Emergency Department for a thorough mental health assessment? His life could have been saved. Now is the time for the Sheriff's Department to take responsibility and for the deputies to be held accountable by the DA. Thank you for your dedication to this board.
Thank you. And finally, we will go to Tom Packard. Mr. Packard.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, my name's Tom Packard. I'm a member of Showing Up for Racial Justice North County. Given that the Sheriff's Department official responses to the CPE report includes the typical reaction of trying to dispute the findings, I encourage you to push back on this by asking the Sheriff's Department to admit that there are viable opportunities for improvement and then develop action plans. As CLERB board staff and time allow, challenge their faulty assumptions regarding the data and draw your own conclusions from the report regarding opportunities for improvement and suggest that the Sheriff's Department act upon them or tell you why they won't. Regarding the state audit, the Sheriff's Department could also be proactive by implementing recommendations made to the legislature. The department could take the initiative by implementing these in advance of any legislative mandates. Please refer to specific recommendations in the audit that you would like the sheriff to implement. To see if the sheriff actually does want to do anything to improve operations, please put on an upcoming agenda adequate time for the sheriff to respond to each recommendation and any other relevant opportunities for improvement and indicate their plans for implementation or their rationale for not implementing. Then have as a standing item for each meeting, time for the sheriff to report on the status of each recommendation that they have said they will implement. Insist that they be specific on action steps and actual results when implementation of each task is completed. After implementation, ask for regular reports on actual changes in sheriff practices and accomplishment of any stated objectives. For example, decreasing the number of jail deaths. Thank you for your attention and for your ongoing work to increase transparency and accountability in the Sheriff's Department.
All right, thank you very much. At this point, there are no other requests to speak, and I see no attendees requesting to speak. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, Vice Chair Delaney.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Our next agenda item is minutes approval, and I will first call for the board meeting on February 8th. Do we have any revisions or do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes with all necessary corrections.
Okay. GI, is that a second?
Second.
All right, we have a first and second. Any discussion? All those in favor? I guess we do roll call. Pastor Spriggs?
Okay, here we go. Eileen Delaney,
You're muted. There you go.
am I
Aye.
muted? Okay.
No,
Pastor
you're
Robert Spriggs.
good now.
Oh, okay. Say, Pastor Robert Spriggs Jr., I, Buki Domingos,
Present.
Nadia Keen Ayub,
What? Hang on one second. Buki, was that a yes or a no? on that?
Yes, yes, yes. yes.
Okay. Thank you.
all right. Nadia Keen Ayub,
Yes.
okay. Bonnie Kink,
Yes.
Thank you. Mary Ann Pintar,
Yes.
Tim Ware,
Yes.
and G.I. Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion passed unanimously. And now for our special meeting, town hall meeting on February 22nd. Are there any revisions? And if not, a motion to approve? GI, motion to approve?
Yes.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, I see Ms. Pintar.
I think Bonnie beat me to it, so.
Bonnie, you can get the next one. Oh, did she beat you to it? Okay, your choice. All right, we have first and a second and another second. All those in favor? I'm sorry, Pastor Spriggs?
Eileen Delaney,
Yes.
Pastor Robert Spriggs Jr., yes. Buki Domingos,
Yes.
Nadia Keene Ayub,
Yes.
Bonnie Kink,
Yes.
Mary Ann Pintar,
Yes.
Tim Ware,
Yes.
and G.I. Wilson.
Yes.
Okay, motion passed unanimously. Thank you. Our next is a presentation and training. It's San Diego County Department of General Services role in the San Diego County Detention Facility Camera Maintenance and Repair. And Mr. Parker will give the presentation.
Thank you, Vice Chair Delaney. For some reason, I can't turn my camera on, so you folks are just going to have to do without that tonight. So that's the best I can do. At this point, I'm reporting back from a conversation with representatives from the Department of General Services. This stemmed from a request that we made 2 months ago of the Sheriff's Department to provide some guidance on their maintenance cycles and how cameras are repaired and how they're identified and whatnot. And the Sheriff's Department responded that the maintenance and repair and repair of cameras and how they're repaired and whatnot is the responsibility of the Department of General Services. So which led to me to the board asking that I reach out to the Department of General Services. And so here's the result. Here's the outcome of that. Keep in mind, I'm probably not going to be able to answer any questions. The Department of General Services has graciously volunteered that if this information does not suffice, or if there are more questions, they're willing to come to April's meeting to provide additional clarification, but they're hopeful that this will suffice. So cameras are installed as part of a project or a new facility. The expected useful life cycle of a camera is about 6 to 7 years, as degradation over time is normal, especially because the cameras are on 24/7, 365. Department of General Services is responsible for the general maintenance of the cameras. But if a camera is in need of repair, a Sheriff's Department personnel, more often than not, a sergeant or a lieutenant, will create an electronic work task in a county-based system that goes right to the Department of General Services. Sometimes a phone call is made first and then followed up with the creation of that electronic work task. DGS, Department of General Services, sends that information to a technician who responds, repairs, and otherwise makes the camera operable and back in service. For emergency situations in which life and safety could be in jeopardy, the goal is to have a technician respond within 4 hours of notification. Routine requests are responded to within 48 hours. So a holding cell is not automatically considered an emergent situation, and all facts are considered when prioritizing a request for service. So basically, DGS relies solely upon the information provided by the Sheriff's Department upon the request for service when determining whether that is a routine or emergent situation. So based upon the information, DGS makes that call, but they can only do what the information presented to them. They can only make that appropriate determination that way. DGS conducts quarterly preventative maintenance of all camera systems in the facilities, in all detention facilities. So during these quarterly PMs, a technician will assess the general health of the system. Basically, is it up? Is it running? Are there outages, issues? The number one thing that they note is DVRs that do the recording, they're always expected to overheat because, again, they're on 24/7, 365. So at minimum, the fans are cleaned out and whatever other services are required are conducted during these quarterly PMs. When equipment's older, DGS recommends upgrades to the Sheriff's Department. These recommendations are initially listed as work tasks that may result in the development of a cost spending plan and subsequently at times a major maintenance project. Major maintenance projects, as we all know, are extremely costly. There is no current capability for DGS to proactively log in and identify equipment in need of repair. So there's no way they can monitor what's happening right now. They will, or we'll talk about Rock Mountain here in a minute, but for DGS right now, they can't do that. They have to rely, they do solely rely upon the sheriff's department notifying them that there is an issue. A new system would be required for them to be able to do this proactive identification of potential issues. DGS rates the camera system quality from 1 to 10, with 1 being the worst and 10 being the best. In DGS's opinion, the systems most in need of replacement are the George Bailey Detention Facility and the Vista Detention Facility. George Bailey Detention Facility is rated by DGS as a 3 to 4. Vista Detention Facility is rated by DGS as a 4 to 5. The Sheriff's Department has initiated a major maintenance project to upgrade the cameras. In part, this may include using existing cameras tied into any new equipment to view from anywhere within the San Diego Sheriff's Department intranet system. Cameras are replaced like for like. The same cameras may be used for a new system. The desire is to go to all IP cameras, and the quality of these cameras is much better. And I can attest to that. We had a new camera system put in by the Department of General Services within the last year, and the quality is incredible. This quality is also what new substations or the substations that are getting camera footage are seeing as well. And any upgrade would have this quality be much better than what currently exists for some of those older facilities. So with that, I will say it's my understanding that the Rock Mountain facility will not be monitored by DGS. It will be monitored by the Sheriff's Department. That's a new facility. So as of right now, everything can be monitored by DGS. I hope that this somehow answers your questions. If there are any questions, I'll do my best, but hopefully that provides some clarification. That concludes my report back.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. I see Ms. Pintar, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Parker, for looking into that for us and for that, that very informative report. I wanted to recall to you that during our discussion of the audit, the state audit, the Sheriff's Department reported, it was stated in that report that the Sheriff's Department planned for a major overhaul of their camera system this year. Was any discussion of that overhaul discussed when you were speaking with either General Services or the Sheriff's Department?
Department of General Services identified the fact that a major maintenance project has been requested and initiated by the Sheriff's Department. That was the extent of information that I have at this point.
Okay. I know that we have another agenda item that addresses new policies that were the result of a request that we made back in September, and I could hold my questions or additional comments to that time. But I just would like to point out that when I asked about these cameras and how the Sheriff's Department went about making sure that they were repaired, the response that we received was that it was up to General Services. But what we're hearing from you right now, and what I saw in the policy that's attached to our agenda today, that it's really up to the Sheriff's Department to be letting General Services know when the cameras are inoperable and need to be fixed. So I'm stating that because the response they gave to us was that it wasn't within our jurisdiction, but according to your report and to the policy that was attached to the agenda today, it really is the sworn staff's responsibility to make sure that the cameras, if they're found to be inoperable, are reported and then fixed. Is that right? Or am I misinterpreting this?
No, you've interpreted it correctly. It's my understanding that DGS does not have the capability to proactively identify the issues, and they must rely upon the Sheriff's Department to report that. The folks that report it are usually, according to DGS, sworn personnel, specifically usually sergeants or lieutenants, is my understanding.
So within our jurisdiction.
Those folks are within our jurisdiction.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pintar. I see GI and Tim. I don't know who was first, so.
Mr. Ware was first.
Oh, okay. Mr. Ware?
Ms. Delaney, I am always first when it comes to GI. I'm always first.
I'll remember that.
Thank you. Mr. Parker, I appreciate you weighing in and answering these questions, but like Ms. Pintar mentioned, I'm thinking from a basic standpoint, and I'm not a maintenance guy at all, but I'm just thinking if it's the Sheriff's Department's responsibility to report an immediate issue, but it seems to me that DGS can do a maintenance cycle. Just like they know that the lifespan of the unit is about 6 to 7 years, they have an idea that this part of the unit breaks down every so often. So I beg to differ as far as them not knowing. They have an idea of when these parts are going to break down. They should be proactive and go repair them.
Well, to your point, well, that's true. But my understanding was, I thought I said somewhere along the way that DGS would consult with the Sheriff's Department about those things. I'm looking at my notes right now, and I don't see that. So I must have dreamt it or something. But I know that they would work with and identify to the Sheriff's Department if there are any issues coming up. You know, and they collaborate with the Sheriff's Department, is my understanding. Oh, that's where it is. It says right here, when equipment is older, my notes indicate when equipment is older, the Department of General Services recommends upgrades to San Diego Sheriff's Department. Now, to be clear, I don't know if they identify that during their quarterly PMs, but one would think that they don't. If the equipment is older, they're tracking it and would recommend to the Sheriff's Department. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay. Also, I was just interested in the remark you made on that DGS, they decide when there is an emergency or when there is a situation that is considered an emergency. That seems kind of strange to me, and that they're not experts on jail operations like the sheriffs are. It just seems to me that.
To be clear, Mr. Ware, and my apologies for interrupting, DGS will make the determination based on the information. If a Sheriff's Department representative calls and says, look, this is an issue. This is a cell that we need the cameras in. And it's the information that's provided by the Sheriff's Department that leads DGS to determine whether it's an emergency or not. So they rely upon the Sheriff's Department to provide that information. That I see where you're coming from, but basically it's the Sheriff's Department's responsibility to communicate to DGS, this is an emergent issue and we need you to respond. That's what I'm being told.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Ware. Mr. Wilson?
Yes, I concur with Ms. Pintar's take on the input that we received tonight. And it still leaves us in a position that we have no idea, because of the policy and how this goes back and forth, who's in charge and responsible for the maintenance and operations of those cameras, whether they're high quality cameras or old cameras. And it's incumbent upon the Sheriff's Department, particularly with the deaths in the jails, to take accountability and responsibility for the operation of maintenance of those cameras and designate somebody that's responsible for doing that. We're getting bureaucratic answers. And the response that we got from the contractor only underscores that fact that, to me, that the responsibility lies with the Sheriff's Department. And I find the Sheriff's Department's response inadequate. And quite frankly, embarrassing. There's nobody accountable or responsible for correcting this situation.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Was there, Paul, did you want to comment on?
No, I'll wait till after Mr. Mingo speaks.
Okay. Mr. Mingos?
Yeah, thank you. I do agree with Ms. Pintar, Mr. Wilson, and most of all, Mr. Ware. So, not a technician and not an expert myself, that they should have some type of maintenance cycle, that after a certain period, they will do routine checks, and the Sheriff's Department should also report when there's any issues. To what Mr. Wilson just said, and I wrote this down, the issue is who is in charge of these equipment. So can this board make a recommendation that we would like to know specifically who is in charge of those, like what the process is for the maintenance of those cameras? Because if DGS determines the severity when a ticket is put in, because I'm assuming what that is a ticket when it's, there's an issue. If they get to determine the urgency, that for me in of itself is an issue, because if sheriff says there is no, the camera in cell 232 is broken, DGS doesn't get to determine when they come out to fix the camera. The camera needs to be fixed, period, because all the cameras should be working all the time, 24/7. So if this board can make that, I don't know what it's going to look like. Maybe we can ask council for advice on this, what it's going to look like to make a recommendation that we would like to know what the procedure is and who is in charge of the maintenance and operations, and that, you know, it's unacceptable to say, well, it's the camera company, and the camera company says, well, it's the sheriff's department.
Thank you, Mr. Mingos. I'd also like to bring up a point that when we start doing our detention facility inspections, this is something that's going to come up as well. And it would be nice to have information about who exactly is in charge and when of maintenance, and when the time frame is for them to be repaired, because it's something that comes up in our reports over and over again. So I think it's something we need to definitely address. Mr. Parker, would you?
Yeah, if I may, and I understand the concerns. Obviously, you know, this is a major issue. I am looking at it a little differently, and maybe I'm misunderstanding. My understanding is, as I just reported out, that the Department of General Services is responsible for the maintenance. So to Mr. Wilson, to everyone's point, it's been made very clear by the department and by the Department of General Services that they are responsible. The Department of General Services is responsible for the maintenance. As far as who notifies, you know, who's responsible for notification, it's sworn staff. And I didn't want to jump the gun, but in my executive officer report will be a policy recommendation response that to me indicates that sworn staff will log if the security video system equipment is working at the beginning of each shift. So right there you have them monitoring their respective system at the beginning of each shift. If my understanding is if there's an issue, sworn members will report it either by phone and follow up with a task, or enter the task into the county system. Department of General Services then, based on the information provided and with hopes that if it is emergent, the Sheriff's Department would say, this isn't a priority, we need you out here as soon as possible. They come out, whether it's an emergent one or not, and make the requested repairs. That's what I'm seeing as far as the process. I could be wrong, but obviously I'm open to do whatever the CLERB would like me to do. If you want DGS to come out, or if you want this to be something that you ask the board members during, or the Sheriff's Department during the board member liaison section, whatever you prefer. But to me, that's the process, that's the system, and it's clear to me, but I might be missing something. So respectfully, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay. Mr. Wilson, your hand was up again?
Yes, I find it ironic that we want to separate operation and maintenance. When you have a tool or an instrument, you are involved in the operation and maintenance. And by saying, well, this task is to operate it and this task is to maintain it. When you compartmentalize it like that, then nobody's accountable and responsible. And again, I ask the question, who's accountable and responsible for the operation and maintenance of this system? You know, and it's very easy to parse it up and diffuse responsibility here, but someone's got to be in charge of operation and maintenance in the facility itself. Hope I'm making sense.
Absolutely. Ms. Pintar?
I'm trying to craft what our request might be here, or what our motion would be. I think Ms. Domingos was suggesting that we, sorry, I didn't write it down, but I would like to suggest that two things. If it is in fact up to the sheriff's sworn staff to report when these cameras are broken, I understand they ask General Services to come back and fix them. Perhaps one thing we could do is request that part of their regular report, when the sheriff's liaisons come to us, they tell us how many cameras were reported, from 1 month to the next as being inoperable or needing repair, and how many were fixed. I don't know how else to, hold accountable the fact that we've been asking about these cameras and getting them fixed, because it's really important. The number of cases that we review that say, the video was the camera was inoperable, so they don't have the information. And I know that it's a necessary tool for the sheriffs as well, so they are able to better, you know, do their jobs. I think that this would be helpful to them. So I'd like to either ask them to report to us how many cameras are inoperable and in need of repair, and how long it took to get those repaired. And I'd also like to know the status of the Sheriff's Department request for a new upgraded system. If that's not something that our liaison can tell us tonight, I would request that they report back to us next month.
Thank you. Mr. Parker?
Okay, yeah, okay. So basically, here's my thoughts on Mr. Wilson's comments for what they're worth, for what my thoughts are worth, right? So I understand the need to define the difference or to separate out maintenance and operation, but not, to me, it's like asking a deputy that drives a car to fix it when it breaks, as opposed to saying, this car is broken, there's something wrong with it, make the appropriate request to fix it and have the appropriate mechanics or whoever fix it. So I think that that's the delineation between maintenance versus operation right now. And I think that that's what's already in place, but again, I could be wrong. And then as far as the status on a report back on, to Ms. Pintar's point, report back on inoperable, you know, give a list of inoperable and fixed, I think you'll find that that the department is going to say that's not within the jurisdiction. Well, I'll let them speak for themselves, but they're going to say that it's not within CLERB's jurisdiction to have that information, but I'll let them say what they're going to say. And then finally, as far as the BWCs that are being implemented in the jails, hopefully a lot of this will go away when the BWC project continues and the pilot program is expanded, of course. And those are just my thoughts again, and I will turn it back over to the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Mr. Bengals, did you have something else you wanted to say?
Yes, I would like to add a little bit more to what I said previously, and to also concur with what GI said, Mr. Wilson, regarding the cameras. I hear that Mr. Parker is trying to separate the two in the analogy of driving a car, and when it's broken, the person who drives the car is not necessarily the one to fix the car. I understand. But what I believe that the motion I was requesting and I needed help from council on is for the CLERB, because it sounds like from the reports, one, like, let me be specific. So DGS is saying that the Sheriff's Department is responsible for when the cameras are broken. And the Sheriff's Department is saying that DGS gets to determine the severity of the issue. All I'm asking for, what I think the motion that would make sense, because it keeps coming up, is that we ask them specifically what the procedure is for maintenance and operations. And they should just spell it out in black and white in layman's terms. So if a camera is broken, or if we have another in custody death, and we hear we were not able to get footage because it hasn't been working, we get to say, Sheriff's Department, for example, you were responsible for making sure that all cameras were operational. What happened with your duties? I just need that to be in black and white.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Vice Chair, do you want me to?
Yes, I was going to ask myself if you would.
Sure. So I think the appropriate motion would be to direct Mr. Parker to return at the next board meeting or whatever the timing you think is appropriate with the report on those issues.
Okay. I would also like to see maybe a time frame, if it's possible, from the time that a camera is reported broken to the time that it's actually fixed. I think that would be important. Of course, knowing if it was very, very important or if it was just down on the list a little bit. Is there, I'm sorry, my screen is not, I'm not able to see. Are there any members of the public, Paul, that you can see that would like to make a comment?
Yeah.
I'm
Vice
sorry,
President-
my apologies.
Yeah, Vice Chair Delaney, I know you
Yes.
can't see, and that's the issue, but I know that as far as board members go, we have four members with their hands up. But we
Okay.
also have a member of the public, and that's Ms. Tasha Williamson, that would like to speak on this topic as well. So I'll defer to you as if you want the
Okay.
board to speak first or Ms. Williamson.
Let's have Ms. Williams. I apologize, Ms. Williams. Again, I can't see. And so thank you, Mr. Parker, for letting me know. Ms. Williams, would you like to make a comment?
Ms. Williamson, you're
There
ready
you
to
are.
go. There you go, Ms. Williamson. Your 3 minutes
Yes,
starts
thank
now.
you. Thank you. It's Miss Williamson. Thank you for allowing me to speak. As I was listening to all of you, I was like cheering because you guys are all asking these questions that need to be asked, but really they have like the answers already at their hands. The sheriffs, they are a part of a chiefs association where there are other departments that have these pre-shift inspections that are detailed of what they're supposed to do, like how officers shall inspect their assigned body-worn devices daily to ensure there's no visual damage and the device is working in order. But they also have at the bottom of these procedures how they're to log onto the officer's mobile computer terminal to do a journal entry when there is a visual damage, inoperable equipment, where that should go. And then at the bottom, it talks about who's responsible for these things. So I think that when we're talking about it, for instance, BWC program administrator responsibilities, like this is a sworn member assigned to operational support, maintain, troubleshoot the BWC units, maintain record of assigned BWC and related equipment, be proactive and able to complete minor repairs, arrange for the warranty and non-warranty of BWC units, repair or replace BWC components, cameras, docking stations, etc. Maintain BWC equipment repair and maintenance records, update software system settings as necessary, train officers and current policy on the proper use of BWC units, provide official copies of any recording, audit trial when properly requested, provide official copies of digital media when properly subpoenaed. Like all of this is at their hands with their partnering agencies that the sheriff sits in the room with every month. And so for them to tell you that they don't have this, it lends to the fact that we know the sheriff's department has some corruption issues. And previously, how long have they gotten away with probably not having anything in place so officers could just walk around with equipment that is not functioning? Keep asking these questions. Know that, again, they sit in a chiefs and sheriffs association where there are chiefs and sheriffs who talk about policy and procedures and a array of other issues. This is easy. If I found it, they can find it. They have a wealth of money and resources, but keep asking those tough questions. I appreciate it, and I'm glad to hear it from you.
Thank you, Ms. Williamson. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to make a comment? Mr. Parker, if you could help me.
No, Vice Chair Delaney, there are no requests, additional requests to speak on this topic. And you have Ms. Kinayoub, Mr. Ware, Mr. Wilson with their hands. Okay.
Ms. Kinayoub, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to draw everybody's attention to the manual of policies and procedures for detention policy in the San Diego Sheriff's Department. It states the policy states each facility equipped with video cameras, monitors, and/or recording devices will ensure proper placement and quality for viewing purposes. This equipment may be used for movement control and monitoring. Facility staff and supervisors will inspect the security video system equipment each shift to ensure the equipment is functioning properly. Procedure is sworn staff assigned to areas equipped with security video system equipment will check the equipment at the start of each shift to ensure proper focus and operation. And it goes on to say the facility administrative staff will promptly notify the appropriate maintenance facility staff to schedule the adjustment or repair. So it states specifically in the policies and procedures for the sheriff's department exactly what their steps are to take if the camera is not functioning. It also states that they have to schedule a date for it to be facilitated. So this is the sheriff's own policies and procedures. This is what should be handling. If they're not getting a date from the company, then we can go back to the company and ask why they're not scheduling a proper fix at that time. But everything should be documented in a log somewhere. So when CLERB is going out to do their inspections, those logs should be looked at, should be documented and be part of the report so that we know how long those cameras were inoperable.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Ware?
Ms. Kenya, you answered my question. I appreciate that information. Just follow your policy. But I do have a comment on Mr. Parker's comment earlier in that from a jurisdiction standpoint, I would love to have a member of General Services to come here with confidence and tell us while people are dying in custody that this is not our jurisdiction. Because if they can do that with confidence, that means they have a good answer for us. So if that's the case, bring it on, because we're all on the hot seat because people are dying. So bring it on. Let's address these things face to face. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ware. Mr. Wilson?
Yes, it's common practice in the logistics industry and also for OSHA to designate and define what operator maintenance is. Sometimes it's called echelon maintenance, but just about every piece of equipment that I'm familiar with that large organizations use, they do have operator maintenance specified. Doesn't matter whether it's a camera or a vehicle. And OSHA requires it as well. And when you take the course in operations of emergency vehicles, it's another thing that's covered there is operator maintenance. And that includes checking fluid levels, making sure the vehicle is safe, making sure it's operational, making sure there's gas in the tank. So I don't think it's a huge leap to expect an operator to have some grasp of maintenance.
Agreed. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Parker, you had mentioned that in your executive officer's report, you're going to refer to this subject as well. Would you like us to wait to do a motion at that time, or would you prefer a motion now?
I would check with Ms. Hoffman to make sure I'm permitted to, because we have it agendized under item number 5 as the policy recommendation response. So if Ms. Hoffman says it's okay to brief you on that now, then I'm willing to do so.
Ms. Hoffman?
The motion could be made with this item or the other one. It's
Either. Okay.
You're not talking, are you talking about moving on to that other item right now?
I was talking about waiting to do a motion until he gets to that item.
Okay, that's up to the board.
Okay, all right. Ms. Pintar, I believe you brought the subject up first. Do you want to wait, or would you like to make a motion?
Well, the policy that Ms. Kina Youb just read, I believe, is the policy recommendation that's
It is.
It is, right, later
Yeah.
on the agenda.
Yes.
So I think that it's appropriate to wait until we discuss that policy.
All right. Okay, and with that, we'll go to the executive officer's report. Mr. Parker, I'll turn it over to you. You've got a long report.
Yeah, I do. Thank you. And just to be clear, to Mr. Ware's point, I will ask the Department of General Services to appear at the April 12th CLERB meeting to provide an overview of pretty much what I just said, but also to be available to answer your questions about camera maintenance from their perspective. Hopefully that meets with the board's approval. So with that, the executive officer report. On February 14th, Acting Sheriff Kelly Martinez and myself, in response to a CLERB policy recommendation, signed a memorandum of understanding that allows CLERB staff to respond to death scenes under CLERB's jurisdiction, to include all in-custody related deaths and deputy-involved shootings. I'll be the only staff member responding for at least the next year or so that the process can be ironed out and consistency is maintained. Since signing the MOU, there has been one in-custody death at this detention facility on February 14th, and 2 deputy-involved shooting deaths, one on February 19th and one on March 3rd. I responded to all 3 scenes and was welcomed and provided information in a collaborative and professional manner. I was very impressed with the interaction, and we look forward to just making it even better as we unfortunately move forward. On February 15th, obviously I talked to the Department of General Services personnel, which we just talked about, the reason I did that. On February 22nd, as we all know, CLERB hosted its first virtual town hall, which pertained to the Center for Policing Equity report in the Sheriff's Department. I believe the town hall was well attended and informative, and most importantly, provided community members a forum in which to express their concerns and ideas and enter into some dialogue about this obviously critical topic. And of course, thoughts or thanks need to go out to our ad hoc subcommittee members for this topic, Ms. Spooky Domingos, Tim Ware, Bonnie Kenk, and Gary Wilson. So thank you all for that, and thank you for everyone who showed up and spoke, every member of the public and to the CPE personnel. February 24th, I met with a representative of the Los Angeles County Public Defender's Office Law Enforcement Integrity Unit to discuss in-custody deaths, information about that, data, how to request information from medical examiner coroner offices, things along those lines. On February 25th, I met with representatives for the San Diegans for Justice about the preliminary results of its analysis of CLERB, and that final report obviously is going to be discussed tonight under item 7B. On February 28th, as a community member, I attended the San Diego Racial Justice Coalition's town hall pertaining to the CPE report. Again, it was an informative town hall, and I appreciate the opportunity to attend, and this time as a community member. You know, looking in from a member of the community, and having the opportunity to speak as well when Dr. Fishman asked for comments from me as a member or as the CLERB executive officer. I appreciated that. It was a very, very good information exchange, I think. On March 3rd, I attended the San Diego for Justice press conference. I was not part of the press conference, just attended to see what was being said pertaining to the CLERB report. On March 4th, I participated on a community panel at the San Diego Probation Department's Professional Development Academy, their session number 6, a 4-hour development academy, or at least a session for their folks that are looking to move up the ranks at the probation department. I also provided on March 4th information about CLERB's disciplinary recommendation process to the Rochester, New York Police Accountability Board. And just yesterday, I attended the Leon L. Williams Human Relations Commission Public Safety Subcommittee meeting. Administrative Secretary 3, Tamika Husband, plans to retire from county service at the end of the month. I'm reviewing candidates and will be interviewing for the planned vacancy prior to April's CLERB meeting. All indications are that CLERB will be granted an Administrative Analyst 2 position at the beginning of the next fiscal year. Obviously, that could change, but at this point, that's what it's looking like. I contend that this position is critical for CLERB, and I know that the Finance and General Government Group agree, especially now. In addition to providing advanced administrative services, I envision this position to be responsible for data compilation, analysis, reporting, and publication. CLERB's longtime outside counsel, James Sandler, is retiring. Mr. Sandler has been CLERB's outside counsel since our inception. Next month, I'd like to put on the agenda, I'd like to present him with obviously some comments and a mark of appreciation for his very long service, and he's navigated CLERB through many, many issues over the last 3 decades. So we'll go more about Mr. Sandler at next month's meeting, but again, I think a thanks at minimum needs to be provided to Mr. Sandler. On March 4th, Dwayne Bennett was selected as CLERB's new outside counsel. Now, Mr. Bennett comes to us with a varied background, and again, I'd like to have him maybe at next month's meeting as well to introduce himself. This just happened where he signed on the dotted line over the last couple of days. So we'll do this in April, but he's come from both sides of the equation, really. He's been on both sides as far as he's been assistant city attorney, a police legal advisor, criminal prosecutor, but he's also been involved in several civil rights actions against police departments and public safety agencies. And you know, he's litigated several matters related to civil rights, due process, and equal protection. So you cannot find, I don't believe, a more balanced person for an independent oversight entity's outside counsel. And that's what I believe we have found with Mr. Bennett. So we'll talk more about him as we move forward. As far as CLERB board member vacancy updates, nothing has changed from last month, but to refresh your memory, District 1 personnel are still reviewing applications for its vacancy. Chair Youngflesh's term has expired. They're still in process to try to find a District 2 member, and Chair Youngflesh will continue to serve until a replacement is appointed. District 3 personnel are still conducting interviews for its vacancy. So that's where we stand for the 3 CLERB member vacancies as of right now. As far as attachment B, the investigative workload. Well, actually, before we get to that, I have to tell you that there was a major oversight on my part. And so I will, obviously this is on me. I interpreted something incorrectly. You'll notice that on tonight's agenda is not a discussion for the continued teleconference of CLERB's meetings. I misinterpreted. I thought that that meeting or that action had to be taken 30 days before the next meeting, not 30 days since. Anyway, I'm still going to get confused about it. But regardless, I thought that we would put this on, have a special meeting in the middle of the month, but I was wrong. So for you CLERB board members, we must have a special meeting for the sole purpose of determining whether or not you folks are going to move forward with virtual meetings, and we must have that meeting by Thursday of this week. So, because that'll be 30 days since the last time. So I'm sorry to do that to you. That is on me. I will take the hit. And next time I promise to consult with county council before I make any decisions such as that. So with that being said, I will leave it to, I believe, obviously for a special meeting, it's the majority of the CLERB that can determine whether we're going to have it, or we must have it. I was looking at Thursday at 5:30. Ms. Hoffman, is that appropriate for me to put out Thursday at 5:30 and just, because I know that the vice chair in lieu of the chair right now has said that that is okay. Is that permissible to do?
That is, we just need to be sure we'll have a quorum.
Will we have a quorum on Thursday at 5:30 for the sole purpose of determining whether or not the teleconference option continues? So is anybody not available Thursday at 5:30? Mr. Wilson, Ms. Keen-Ayub. So that's 2. And if we consider that perhaps Ms. Youngflesh will not be well by then, that's 3. We therefore still have a quorum. So I'm sorry again for the inconvenience. We will get this out. We will do this, and we'll go from there. So my apologies. Ms. Domingos, I see that you have a question.
I'm not available 5:30.
So at this point, we now have 5, which is still a quorum. So the other 5 of you. All right. Everybody looks good. So I hope to see everyone there. And I'm sorry again for the last minute notice. And one thing I forgot to say that as part of the executive officer report on March 4th, I met with Assistant Sheriff Adams Hyder at the Sheriff's Department, obviously Lieutenant Ted Greenewald, Lieutenant Michelle Craig, Sergeants Daniel Dennis and Kristen Brayman. And the whole purpose of the meeting was to meet with the Assistant Sheriff. She has obviously taken over the detention's responsibility for Detention Services Bureau. And I was very impressed talking to her about the plans that she has and what she wants to do and her responsiveness to the issues that are facing the Sheriff's Department in their detention facilities right now. So I'm looking forward to see what she and her folks can do as we move forward. So that is the end of that part of my executive officer report. As far as the investigative workload, there were 11 cases.
Mr. Parker, Bonnie, I think, wants to comment on the special meeting. Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, that's okay. Ms. Kank. Ms. Kank, you might be muted if you're trying to talk.
Actually, Bonnie wants to comment on the fact that Mr. Parker has gone over and above for us as far as outreach and getting out in the public and just doing such a wonderful job. I just very, 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 very proud of him. That's all.
That's very kind, Ms. King. Thank you so very much for that. And well, now I'm blushing and I can't really continue. But anyway, we'll go to investigative workload report, attachment B. There were 11 new cases in February, as compared to the 14 last month or last February. There are 5 cases on tonight's agenda. 2 of them are death cases. At the end of February, there were 75 active cases, 4 of which were lodged and 71 were open and active. There were 30 open death investigations, and we have the documents for 11. We're still waiting documents on the remaining 19. And again, 2 of those cases are on tonight's agenda. We've already talked about some of the deaths that were that occurred last month, but there were actually 4 Sheriff's Department deaths in February. 2 were related to the Vista Detention Facility. 1 was a possible natural, and 1 was a possible drug-related one. And then 1 was related to San Diego Central Jail, which was possible natural. And that person had been released from custody. 1 of the Vista Detention folks had been released from custody, had been in a hospital. Both of those had been in a hospital, but they were still reported to us, which is great. I mean, it's very good that the Sheriff's Department did that. And then there was the 1 patrol-related deputy-involved shooting, which occurred down in Otay Mesa. There were 9 open uses of force resulting in great bodily injury without a complaint. There were 3 open discharges of firearm. There was 1 last month that we received. So that makes 3 that we currently have open. And there's still the 1 use of force at a protest or First Amendment protected event, which I believe will be on next month's agenda. At least that's the plan. As far as attachment C, the case progress and status reports, you know, I used to go into a lot of detail about those because there were so many issues with it, but I think right now I'm just going to, unless there are issues, I'm not really going to highlight it, other than every member of the public and every member of the board now has exactly the cases that we had at the end of the month, who's assigned to them, their due dates, where we are, and you'll see that we're in a lot better condition than we've ever been, and we'll continue to make those improvements, and that's thanks to staff. Attachment D, executive officer correspondence to the full CLERB. I sent several emails. 4 of them were general media article compilations containing 23 articles. 1 email announced the MOU between CLERB and the Sheriff's Department, and then 1 email announced the San Diegans for Justice report release. As of this moment, there are 3 policy recommendations pending response, 2 from the Sheriff's Department, and then 1 from probation. And you know, not to, you know, I've had a conversation with probation, and the request that we made to them was the same as we made to the Sheriff's Department, right? To allow us to have access to the scenes in which, unfortunately, someone dies in custody or as a result of an action of the probation department. The issue with the probation department, I know they're actively working on their response, but quite frankly, their issue is they're not the investigating agency for any of the deaths. It's always going to be another agency, and more often than not, it would probably be the Sheriff's Department. Or if there was unfortunately a shooting, it would be the agency or it would be the jurisdiction in which the shooting happened. So they are working, and they have been actively working on a response, but with a new chief probation officer and then some movement going on in the probation department, they're doing everything they can to get us that response as soon as possible. So in reference to policy recommendation responses, let's talk about first 20-063. That's the one that Ms. Keena-Ubik brought up and Ms. Pintar touched on. And so if you recall, a couple of months ago, I think it was September, we looked at the Sheriff's Department policy I-19, which talked about security video systems. And one of the things that we noticed was not in the policy was that there was no logging, right? There was no, it said to check the system, if I recall correctly, but there was no indication, there was no mandate to document the status of those checks. So we made that recommendation. We made the recommendation to mandate that sworn staff document and keep a record of video system checks. And so based on our recommendation, the Sheriff's Department made the changes, incorporated and updated into their existing policy a sentence in our policy section that states all facilities will create a process to audit and track issues and repairs of their security video system equipment. So that was added to their existing policy statement and added to their existing procedure under section 1, I believe, of the procedure section. Sworn staff in these areas will log if the security video system equipment is working. This information will be logged into the GYMS area checklist completed by sworn staff at the beginning of each shift. So that is the response that we got from our policy recommendation that the department implemented on February 3rd of this year. So I know there was conversation, and I could stop right now, and I still have a couple of things to talk about, but not much, but I can stop right now so the board can discuss that topic, Vice Chair.
Okay, does anyone want to make a comment or? Ms. Pintar?
Yeah, I guess what I'm struggling with here, Paul, is, you know, when we're asking for reports back about the status of these cameras and their repairs, you're suggesting that you believe the Sheriff's Department, which they did once already, is going to push back and say that this is not within our jurisdiction. But the policy itself says that it is the responsibility of sworn staff. So I'm not understanding how it's not within our jurisdiction.
Right. The general, what you folks have been asking for is generally, if you limit it to report back on the activities of sworn staff when it pertains to, or something like that. I mean, but at this point, yes, sworn staff are responsible for check-in, logging, and reporting if there are issues. That's very clear from their policies and from what the Department of General Services says. But as far as an overarching report back on the maintenance of the system, the cameras that are not working, those are not, yes, sworn staff, if they're aware of it, they have actions to take. But the big picture is when there's an inoperable camera, that's not sworn staff's responsibility to fix it. So I see where you're coming from. I'm connecting the dots as to where you're at, but I know that the department is going to say, ask us about sworn staff, ask us about what's in your jurisdiction. We can respond to that. But we will not respond to things that are not within your jurisdiction. And so I see where you're coming from, but I also, unless CLERB asks the questions about the activities of people within our jurisdiction, we have no, with the way we're currently set up, and we'll talk about that in another item, but the way we're currently set up, we don't have the jurisdiction to look at that from a big picture perspective. We can only identify issues of systemic issues and trends as they pertain to complaints, and complaints are based on the things that we have jurisdiction over. Complaints are deaths. So that's my convoluted answer, Ms. Pintar.
Every week or every month when we get these reports that we are reviewing, almost every month, one of them says the camera wasn't working, the camera was poor quality, we couldn't get good enough video. That it seems to me it falls within our jurisdiction. So I'm going to ask that we request that the Sheriff's Department let us know how many cameras, how many requests are made for repairs to security video system equipment each month. And at least at that point, maybe we would be able to track trends. Are there fewer requests made because the repairs are being made? Or are we still seeing the same number of inoperable cameras? Is that within our jurisdiction?
No, I don't, listen, I don't think so, Ms. Pintar. I don't think so, because again, you're saying the quality of the video. Look, I don't want to sit here and cut and split hairs, right? But ultimately, and the Sheriff's Department's on, they hear what we're saying. They know that they're going to say what their jurisdiction is. And I think that requests made for repairs, I think that would be, if it's being made by sworn personnel, I don't know if they track that, but okay, if that's being made by sworn personnel, if it's an action of sworn personnel, perhaps they would respond to that. But as far as it's poor quality, I'm not certain how they would know it's poor quality until they go. I mean, that's usually when this stuff is found out, right?
That's not the question I'm asking. I would only raise that as an example of what we are seeing in these reports on a regular basis.
Understood. And what you raised, I didn't think were jurisdictional issues for sworn members, other than ensuring that they do the checks, they log the checks. If during the check they believe that there's a problem, they report it accordingly. So, but whatever you folks would like me to move forward with and drafting to the department, I certainly will.
Could we possibly ask what the time frame is from the time a sworn deputy reports a camera outage to the time that it's fixed? Would that be in our jurisdiction?
The information on that would come from the Department of General Services in their in-house system. That would, because from the time they make the request to the time it's fixed has nothing to do with sworn personnel.
Yeah, even though a sworn personnel is making that request.
Right. That would be, look, if for me, I think that if you can perhaps let's get Department of General Services here next month, have them say what they're going to say, provide these clarifications, and Ms. Pintar, to Ms. Pintar's point, I can certainly follow up with whatever Ms. Pintar wants followed up right now, right? And hopefully we can have an answer to that by next month as well, and then talk about it in further depth next month.
Mr. Ware? Ms. Pintar, did you have anything else you wanted to add? My
No,
apologies.
no, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Ware?
No, to Ms. Pintar's comments. It seems like we're playing Jeopardy. You know, you have to phrase the answer in the form of a question. And the bottom line is, if we can get whoever that person is in the sheriff's department as high up as possible, whoever's making that decision to come on here in addition to the general services people and answer these questions for us. That's all. It's very simple. We just want to know who is responsible for it. You know, it sounds like, well, we're not gonna repair this system because it's not in your jurisdiction. But if it was in your jurisdiction, we would repair the system. And I know that's not what they're saying, but that's what it sounds like. So I just like to get the people here because I'm sure they have a very good reason on why this process is not where it should be. And I'm sure they have an idea how they're going to fix it. I just like to hear the plan.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Mr. Wilson?
Yes, I viewed some video from a detention facility yesterday. It was a poor quality. There were blind spots, and it made it very difficult to try to figure out what was going on. And it involved a death. I think that's within our jurisdiction. It makes our job harder. We don't get accurate input. And we have people dying in the jail. And I want to know who at the sheriff's department is going to raise their hand and say, I'm going to address the surveillance camera and video issue in the detention facility. And I'm going to see how we can institute some kind of procedure where someone is accountable and responsible for the operation and maintenance of that material. I'm like Mr. Ware. I want to hear what their action plan is, and I want to know who's raising their hand. Because if you saw that video I saw yesterday, you would just shake your head because you're trying to determine what's going on in a life or death situation. And to do otherwise, I just cannot believe we're going to get into an argument and find lines of jurisdiction here, jurisdiction there, maintenance here, operations there. It's time we do the right thing and get on this and address it and find somebody at the sheriff's department that wants to help us fix this problem. I hope I'm making sense.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. You are. Mr. Parker, maybe if you could schedule personnel to come and talk to us next month, we'd have a better idea. And then from that point, we could make a motion or a recommendation. Would that work for everyone?
If I may,
Yes.
First off, obviously this is an important topic, and I don't want anybody to misconstrue what I'm saying. It's my job, as you're going to see later on in the meeting, it's my job to ensure that we are maintaining and sticking to the charter code and our rules and regulations and being independent. It is not that I don't believe that it's important. It's hugely important. And so I will say that what I think, what I'm going to ask the department to do, I just had a wonderful meeting with the assistant sheriff who's now in charge of detention. Why can we not ask her, along with the Department of General Services, if let's see if Assistant Sheriff Adams Hyder is willing to come to, first off, just to address the CLERB, right? Why not? As the new Assistant Sheriff over detentions. And if this topic comes up about the cameras, she would be the one that would have the best information as possible for the Sheriff's Department's plans moving forward. And so that, in conjunction with the Department of General Services, perhaps that's something that we can do for next month if the Assistant Sheriff is available and willing.
I think that's a great idea. Is everyone agreed to that? Informally?
Yes.
Okay. Bonnie, Ms. Kank, sorry.
Okay. I just have a question. I feel like I'm playing devil's advocate here. So as far as the video footage from those cameras goes, besides CLERB looking at them and reviewing them and for evidence or whatever, who else does that? If the sheriff's department needs that to prove that they are not negligent in the death, then why are they not? I don't know. rhetorical question. Why are they not interested in having a better quality or keeping them maintained? I don't know.
Let's give them a chance to answer those questions if they come to do a presentation next month. I think it's such an important topic, and I know we could talk for hours on it, but let's continue that until next month, where we get a better idea of what their response is. So with that, if there's no other comments, we're going to move on.
Vice Chair Delaney, I still have a couple of things to say for my executive officer report.
Absolutely,
There
yes.
were also, for my executive officer report, it looked like there were 2 requests to speak from members of the public.
Of course.
So real quickly, I don't have much else to say other than the policy recommendation response obviously came back from the Sheriff's Department in reference to our response to death scenes, and the MOU is attached and whatnot. And we will continue to work together on that and kind of learn as we go. It's a brand new process for everyone involved to include the Sheriff's Department and their personnel. So we'll move forward together. And then we are waiting for a sustained finding response on a death case, and we received 2 sustained finding responses, attachments H and I, which talk basically about the Sheriff's Department is in receipt of the CLERB's sustained finding and has forwarded it up to the chain of command for those respective deputies. So with that, there are 2 requests to speak. That concludes my executive officer report. Would you like me to call the public speakers?
Please.
Tom Packard, are you there?
Yes, I hope you haven't already covered this, but I'm on page 3 of attachment E, and the question of where you have the authority over sworn staff versus non, the procedure, the way it's worded, that the sworn staff log in what they saw, but then should adjustment or repair be needed, the sworn staff notify the facility administrative staff through email and/or facility maintenance. So that looks like you would have no authority over that. And that seems pretty casual. If it's well, send an email. And then the facility administrative staff promptly notifies that promptly is not defined. So it could be that sworn staff could say something, there's no time frame on when they had to say it. And then the civilian staff report it. So there could be a lag there. And I think Paul Parker's early example of a car, if a deputy showed up for a shift and something was not working in their car, they would want it taken care of right away. There would probably be a time issue there. So I guess maybe if y'all have that kind of question, that could be held for somebody from the Sheriff's Department, but it looks like there's a gap where you don't have the authority and there aren't any specific timing issues about when people have to notify people at the next stage.
Thank you, Mr. Packard. And next we will go to Tasha Williamson. Ms. Williamson.
Yes, my question actually, it was just brought to me that there was an incident that occurred in Santee last week. And I just wanted to know, is there any other officers that have jurisdiction in Santee outside of the Sheriff's Department?
Okay, in reference to your question, just real quick, no, it's the Sheriff's Department. That's a contract city for the Sheriff's Department. And with that, Vice Chair Delaney, there are no additional requests to speak under item 5.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go now to the board chair's report. Chair Youngfish gave me some information about some of the other agenda items, didn't say anything about chair's report. So I would like to thank the public for your attendance, and as well as the sheriff and probation liaisons. We appreciate everyone speaking and giving us good ideas and recommendations. So thank you very much. And now,
Vice Chair Delaney.
Yes.
Chair Youngflesh also wanted to remind the board members who have not done so, Form 700 is due, I believe, April 1st.
That's correct. For board members, your Form 700s are due, I believe it's April 1. So please get those in. Thank you, Mr. Parker, for reminding me. And now we'll go to new business and 7A, and I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Parker.
All right, thank you, Vice Chair Delaney. this item is in reference to a couple of months ago, we asked the Sheriff's Department, as you know, the Center for Policing Equity report had come out. We all know that. We've had, you know, a town hall put on by us, a town hall put on by the Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego in reference to the CPE report. And so we asked the department, because the department did respond to the CPE report at the time it was released, and we asked the department to respond specifically and to address concerns identified in that report. There were concerns about racially disparate activities and whatnot. And so the Sheriff's Department did respond to us. We'd asked them to respond and perhaps within 60 days and maybe even do some type of presentation or report back at this meeting. And so they did. And their response basically is saying that they are in receipt of our request and they stand by the response that they had to the CP report. And they provided that response to us. And when I forwarded that out to you folks again and made sure that the members of the public, and it was on our website. So that is the report back. There will be no one from the Sheriff's Department speaking about this issue moving forward. So
okay,
I will turn it back over to you, Vice Chair Delaney.
thank you. Do we have members of the public that would like to comment on 7A? Mr. Parker, can you see anyone?
Oh, I apologize, Vice Chair Delaney. There's no request to speak on that at this time.
Okay, so 7B is San Diegans for Justice, CLERB Assessment and Strengths and Opportunities, which is again attachment J. Is there any members of the public that would like to speak on that before I turn it over to Mr. Parker?
I don't have any, Vice Chair Delaney, and I see none.
Okay, would you like to speak to that, Mr. Parker?
Sure. As I've been saying in numerous executive officer reports over the last 6 to 8 months, San Diegans for Justice, they reached out to me, like I said, maybe, I don't know, 6 to 8 months ago, introducing themselves to me. They are the folks who were responsible for placing Measure B on the ballot, which was approved to strengthen the San Diego Police Department's civilian oversight entity. So San Diegans for Justice wanted is very interested in civilian oversight in San Diego County and wanted to see if there was a way that CLERB should be strengthened, if there are any opportunities for improvement or whatnot. So I met with them a few times. They hired a Professor Sharon Fairley from Chicago, very, very well known in civilian oversight circles, very well respected, extremely knowledgeable about this topic. She put together the report for San Diegans for Justice, which you folks have, which was released last Thursday at a press conference by SDJ. And in that report, there are 70 identified recommendations, really termed opportunities for improvement, right? And so some of those talk about expanding CLERB's jurisdiction to include all personnel. Some of them talk about ways to increase our independence and timeliness of our process, enforcing our subpoena power and duty to cooperate, increasing our resources. One of the things they did point out, and again, you know, I didn't know this, but they compared funding, they compared percentage of budget from an oversight entity to the entities in which it provides oversight, and you know, San Diego County, you know, when compared nationwide, is really not is not funded or staffed in the appropriate fashion compared to other entities for what that's worth. Now, again, keeping in mind, some of those entities are in different models. They have different models. We are the investigatory model, but some of them are auditor, monitor, review. So there are those different models. And so there could be reasons for that. But again, the San Diegans for Justice is recommending that we be expanded, pretty much in line with some of the things we've already been recommending. So as of right now, they don't necessarily say it in the report, but a lot of what they're saying, just for educational purposes, is it's almost as if they're recommending more of an auditor, monitor, or inspector general type of responsibilities, right? Right now, everything that CLERB does is based solely, as we're having this conversation every month, solely about complaints, systemic issues and trends, solely about complaints and deaths. That's why we're even having these conversations and cutting and splitting words and all that stuff. A different model, which may have to go on an ordinance, you know, maybe put out to the, not an ordinance, but a ballot measure to the public or whatever, would allow for those things to happen without all that back and forth, right? There's so many different things that this report says, and I encourage the members of the board to read it. But here's the issue right now. Out of those 70 items for opportunities for improvement, they have listed some entities, whether it's the Board of Supervisors, whether it's you folks yourselves or staff, to consider implementing. So there is a lot. So I can tell you that the things that San Diego for Justice want staff to implement, I'm actively looking at. We've already done some of them. That's our plan to do. But when it comes down to the things that they recommend CLERB itself should do, or the Board of Supervisors, I think we can have a conversation tonight, but probably, you would probably want to do a subcommittee of some kind to talk about this report because of everything that's in it, and really figure out what CLERB is going to do about its recommendations, and then allow me and council just to kind of work for the other issues as far as the Board of Supervisors, and Ms. Hoffman and Ms. Raza will help me to work through those issues. So that's the overview, Vice Chair Delaney, if that makes any sense. There's a lot to it. I applaud the San Diego for Justice personnel for putting this together, Professor Fairley. It's time for this conversation. CLERB is in the process of getting its house in order. CLERB is in the process of becoming a relevant civilian oversight entity. So these recommendations, many of them would make CLERB be an entity that could provide the best possible civilian oversight services for the members of the community. And so that's where I'll leave it at that. Vice Chair Delaney.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Mr. Ware, did you have your hand raised?
Yes. Mr. Parker, real quick, with your wealth of knowledge and your wealth of experience in this area, community oversight, and your dedication to San Diego, do you believe that we have the right model for San Diego right now and where we're trying to go? And if not, what do you think we need to do real quickly, or is that something that we're going to address another time?
No, I don't think it's something we're going to address at another time, but to answer your question, which does kind of fall in line with this item, no, I don't think we have the right model. I think that the investigative model is a great model. And again, it helps us to identify issues, because again, why are we here, right? I mean, we're supposed to be a transparent, independent entity that is there to hold folks accountable, and also to provide the Sheriff's Department, probation departments feedback to provide, so they can provide the best possible service, right? But we can only do that based on the complaints that we receive, or unfortunately the deaths that occur. We don't have the proactivity that we, the ability to be as proactive as we like, as evidenced by the camera situation tonight. If we had a different model, or at minimum had jurisdiction over everybody responsible for things that occur within the departments, perhaps we could be more thorough. We could do more pattern and practice type of investigations. We could identify systemic issues not based solely on complaints. We would have access to things that would make our investigations much more independent. I do not want to say all that to come off as I'm not appreciative for the relationship that we have with both departments right now. They both are being responsive to us for the areas in which we have jurisdiction. I think that needs to be made very clear. It's the areas that we don't. And that is why I think that the civilian oversight model that we currently have is not the best for the community members of San Diego County and for the folks in our detention facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Mr. Ware, did you have any other comments?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Parker.
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, I happen to agree with Mr. Parker regarding the model. Yeah, they talk about several different models, and review model, advisory model, a supervisory model, an appeals model, and of course we're in an investigative model. And I'm wondering if there's a hybrid or something down the road that has to evolve. So I'm really in favor that we form an ad hoc committee and take a deep dive into this report and look at the models that Mr. Parker is referring to, and maybe coming up with a hybrid model that would fit what we hope to accomplish here in the county.
Council, are we allowed to form an ad hoc committee based on the agenda item, or do we need to agendize that for next month?
Your board can form a subcommittee.
Okay. Mr.
And
Wilson,
just, sorry to interrupt, just as a refresher, the board could vote to create a subcommittee, and under CLERB's rules, the chair, in this case, the vice chair, identifies the members of the subcommittee.
okay. Should we have, do we need a motion to form that subcommittee? And a
Yes.
vote? Okay, so Mr. Wilson, was that a motion to form a
Yes.
subcommittee?
Yeah, yes, it
there
is.
Okay, is there a second? Ms. Pintar, that's second. Any other discussion? Okay, Pastor Spriggs, you're on for roll call.
Yes, ma'am. Eileen Delaney,
Yes?
Pastor Robert Spriggs Jr., yes. Buki Domingos,
Yes.
Nadia Keene Ayub,
Yes.
Bonnie Kink,
Yes.
Marianne Pintar,
Yes.
Tim Ware,
Yes.
excuse me, and G.I. Wilson.
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. So point, Ms. Hoffman, should I just have them contact me, those that are interested, or do I have to appoint them tonight?
It should be done in the open meeting tonight.
Okay, so may I see you raise your hand if you would like to be on this committee? This ad. Okay.
Just for clarity, sorry, just for clarity's sake, can you please call the ad hoc committee by name?
You mean what the name of the committee would be?
Yes, please.
So this would be the, well, you made the motion, GI.
The San Diegans Justice Review Committee,
Okay, Justice Report Review Committee.
Report Review Committee.
All right. Bonnie, Ms. Kink,
I would be on that committee.
pardon me?
I would like to be on that committee.
Okay, Ms. Kink? Mr. Wilson, you wanted to be on the committee?
I'm pretty committed out. I'm on one right. I'm on two right now.
Yeah,
But
I know, same here.
if need be, let me know.
Okay,
I'm available, but I prefer to see some new faces.
agree. Well, are you gonna be a committee of one, Bonnie?
Looks that way.
So the CLERB rules also indicate that the chair is an ex officio
Right.
voting member of the
Right,
committee.
I will be on this committee, yes. Bonnie and I, we need one, let's get one other person.
I'll join you.
Okay, Ms. Domingos. All right. And Ms. Hoffman, do we have to, since we're ad hoc, we're not subject to the Brown Act, but do we have to, at this point, say when we're going to meet, or can we decide amongst ourselves?
You can decide amongst yourselves, but you should appoint who the chair of the subcommittee will be.
Okay. Bonnie, would you like to be the chair? Because Buki is.
Nominate you.
Pardon me?
No, but I nominate you.
Oh, of course you did. Okay. All right, I will be the chair until, unless I can talk someone else into it. So, all right, let's figure out when we want to meet and how many times we want to meet. I think this is not something that needs to go on for a long time since it is an ad hoc committee. But give me, I'll send out some dates and times. Mr. Mangos, when do you work during the day? What time do you get off?
My days off are Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I believe.
Okay. And Ms. Hank, how about you? Would those days work? Or do you prefer evening?
Well, those days will work, definitely.
Okay. All right, let me check and I will get back to you in the next day or so, okay? Thank you, everyone. All right, our next business is CLERB Town Hall considerations. And Ms. King, is your hand raised? Did you want to say something or you just? haven't lowered your hand. There you go. Thank you. But before we get onto the subject, I just want to reiterate that one of the most important and fundamental elements of CLERB's charter is that we are and we remain independent. So when we discuss these things, I always keep that in the forefront of your minds, that we are an independent board. And with that, Mr. Parker, did you want to say something about this?
Sure. Before I turn it over to you, I just this item is on the agenda because there was a request from board members to talk about town halls moving forward, right? Pretty much to lessons learned and whatnot from the one that we just did. The February 22nd town hall was, I contend, I believe, was a major success, and a lot of that had to do with the ad hoc committee members, but more importantly, it had to do with the members of the public showing up and being willing to talk and listen and to enter into a dialogue about this very important topic. So I love the concept of town halls, but I think that there is a little bit of a confusion and some concern about the sponsorship. We've heard several members of the public tonight ask to co-sponsor. And we had also talked about flyers before, and these are issues that have come up that have been concerning to maybe perhaps some other board members. So that's why it's on the agenda. From the executive officer perspective, I am obviously, I think my actions and everything has indicated that I'm open to the community. I listen to the community. I go to the community. We as a board are listening and going to the community more so than we ever have. But I do think that, as Vice Chair Delaney just said, the sponsorship concept, for me, it's problematic. And it's only problematic because, again, we're independent. Now, I know that some people will say, but some board of supervisor members, they have sponsors when they do town halls. They do flyers when they have town halls. That's true, but they're not nonpartisan. They're not necessarily independent if you really get right down to it, right? They have political parties, they have political affiliations, they have constituents, none of which that we have. I think we must maintain our independence. Now, to the point of family members not being able to show up, family members not being part of our town halls, that's important to me when we start saying that. But why can they not be? They show up at the town hall. We give them the time and the space and the grace to say what they want to say. We would do that if it was co-sponsored or not. So that's the way I'm looking at it as the executive officer. And as far as flyers go, I think that, as an independent government agency responsible for civilian oversight, that our agenda and our press release through the county's communications office, and when our social media is up and running within the next month, we can publicize it the best that we can. And hopefully members of the public will do what they did last month, which was to show up without a flyer, solely with an agenda and a press release and word of mouth from our meetings. Again, I don't say this to be contrarian to what the public wants. I know members of the public want this, but that's my thoughts as the executive officer, who obviously serves at the leisure of the board and will do whatever the board asks me to do. But I thought that if there were some concerns by board members, that I figured I'd weigh in, give the overview, and then turn it back over to Vice Chair Delaney so that the board can discuss and make the appropriate decisions as we move forward on town hall.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Chair Youngfish did want me to remind you that co-sponsors had been brought up and that we do not co-sponsor to maintain our impartiality and the appearance of impartiality as well. Of course, members of this public are always welcome to speak. No one is really more important than another. We want to hear from everyone. But when we have a town hall meeting, it is a special meeting. And that special meeting, we have to be in compliance with how we run our meetings and our regulations and all that. Even if it is a town hall meeting, it is still a special meeting. And so I will, Buki, Mr. Minkus, I see your hand up.
You hear it too? Just kidding. Yeah, I wanted to speak to the topic. It came up last month. It was a concern. Maybe there's an issue with the term co-sponsor, which makes it appear that if CLERB has a community organization on their flyer, it is implied that CLERB loses its independence. I know of other commissions like the Juvenile Justice Commission and others who actually have communities as co-sponsors, but it's definitely clear that the Juvenile Justice Commission or the CLERB or whoever it is will maintain their independence. Like these organizations don't get to dictate to the CLERB, you know, what our rules and regulations are and how we are to operate, because we have our rules and regulations already assigned. So I'm thinking to myself, maybe if we use the word co-host, and the co-host would just simply mean that these certain family members will be at the CLERB meeting. They're not going to, of course, be in charge of choosing our date or time. That's already done. That's already set. All they have to do is show up, but it'll just be like they're co-hosting the meeting. We would do a back and forth. The last time we did the CLERB meeting, it was myself and Mr. Parker. Maybe now we can have, you know, Mr. Parker, another board member, and a family member or a community organization that has been doing the work, have prominent role, and everybody else speak. I think for me, if we work with the terms, we can have other organizations, and I'm really hoping that we can gravitate towards having a flyer. I know that there are lots of community members that are very engaged, but they're of a certain age. So if folks can remember from previous board meetings, somebody had called in, wanted to chime in, but could not for the life of her find the agenda. If there is a flyer and it's circulated with emails, it puts everything in a one pager, takes away all the verbiage where people have to sift through, especially of a certain age that are struggling with technology. Just makes it easier for everyone to have the hands-on, and literally somebody who's younger can, you know, stop by somebody's house and just drop off the flyer and print it out for them. So if you want to do it hands-on and technology-wise, and for those who don't do social media, we're excluding those people out. Some family members, even though they're younger, might not do social media just because it's too traumatizing. There are many issues why people don't do social media. So if we want to be all inclusive, I think a flyer is great. Somebody who's more savvy can print out the flyer, send it over to someone. So I think we should rethink the flyer. And if the word co-sponsorship is too heavy of a word, co-host, we know the prominent organizations that have been attending these meetings and their members religiously. We can approach them and see if this is something that we all want to do. But I don't think in doing that we as a CLERB lose our independence. I just don't think that is possible. Because the moment we lose our independence, then whoever feels they're operating that way needs to get off the board quickly. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Mr. Mankos. Tim?
Yes, you know, I don't have a lot of history on town halls. I think really that wasn't my first one last time, but really being involved in one, I thought it was great. I thought we gave the public what we want and what they want, and that's to hear their voices, have their voice being heard, and to have a dialogue. And so I don't see what do we gain by having a co-sponsored event. I think we already reached the goal that we want, and that is to get the voice out there. So I don't see, again, I'm not experiencing this, but I'm just looking at it from a Tim Ware lens. And it seems to me that we're where we need to be, and that is giving them their voice and listening to their voice and seeing how we can make a difference as a response to their voice being heard.
Thank you, Mr. Ware. Ms. Pintar?
I actually have had quite a bit of experience with town halls and public forums and working at various government agencies. And it seems extremely unusual to me that we as an independent body would have a co-sponsor or a co-host even for a town hall that is technically a special meeting of this body. I do understand very much that there are groups, interest groups and organizations that are extremely committed. They are the same organizations and people that show up at every single meeting and have a lot of important things to say. And I could see that we could give them a special place on the agenda, that they could be special presenters, similar to the way that we had CPE as a presenter at the last town hall. I could see San Diegans for Justice to being a presenter on the actual agenda, presenting their report for people to hear from them directly and for us to ask questions. I would ask everybody to think about it this way. There are other organizations that may say, hey, why were we not invited to be a co-sponsor? We would like you to hold another town hall and we want to be the co-sponsor or the co-host this time. And they may not be organizations that we think would be the right groups to be having these conversations, to be co-hosting this event with. If it's just ours, if it's the CLERB hosting, everyone is invited. Everyone is invited to speak. There is nothing that prohibits, I'm family members. I'm not certain that I'm aware of the issue with family members wanting to come or have a different role, but certainly I would want to hear from family members and that they would be welcome. But I think that this should strictly be CLERB hosted events and everyone is welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Pintar. Mr. Wilson?
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly with Ms. Pintar. I wish I was that articulate. And I think we should maintain our total independence and the appearance of independence. And let me tell you why. I have a phenomenal amount of energy invested in making sure that we do appear as independent. And some of you remember when we finally got ourselves out from under the public safety group. That was a battle, and that took a phenomenal amount of energy, particularly from Mr. Parker, and I think it was tied to a grand jury recommendation. And like Ms. Pintar and Mr. Ware, I think it's essential that we at least make a steadfast effort to remain independent, and that way we can represent everybody in the community. We can really lean on various organizations like the Sheriff's Department to be transparent. And I think the public will later on, if they don't already, appreciate that we're acting independently. And basically we try to be non-judgmental, nonpartisan. We try to deal with the facts without any association. And the big thing for me is that we avoid or try to avoid creating the appearance of impropriety or creating the appearance of an association. We go out of our way to try to stave that off. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. As you said, perception is very, very important. Bonnie?
Thank you, Vice Chair Delaney. So Mr. Wilson and Ms. Pintar were very eloquent in what they said, but as I don't speak that way. So what I think Ms. Pintar was getting at, and I could be wrong, and I don't want to put words in her mouth, but what if a white supremacist organization wanted to co-sponsor? Would have to let them if we let anybody else co-sponsor. And now I'm going to go away, so you can all kill me.
Oh, Ms. Pink, I don't think we're going to do that. Again, we all have to be very cautious to ensure that the public's perception is clear that we are independent.
I have my hand up.
Yes, I'm getting to you, Ms. Domingos. There you go. Go for it.
Oh, I'll wait for you to finish your comment. You were
Oh, no,
saying-
I'm done.
Okay, so let me start with Ms. Kink and I'll address Ms. Pintar's comment. If we truly want to be independent, we cannot be afraid of if a white supremacist said they wanted a co-host. If we are truly independent, it means one thing. You said everybody is included. And then in another breath, you say, what if a such and such and such? If everybody is really included, it means everybody. I remember doing the ad hoc committee and the question was, are we only going to focus on Black people dying in custody, or are we going to focus on everybody dying in custody? Because a death is a death is a death. And we unanimously decided that we're going to focus on everybody dying in custody. That is how we show that we are independent and that we don't have any conflict of interest and we're not taking sides. The reason why I'm bringing up the co-hosting this time, if the word co-sponsor seems to be an issue, and I actually invite all the other CLERB board members to look this up and look at other boards and commissions and see what they do with community organizations, because I think it's only fair. I don't think we're the only board in San Diego who is governed by, a government entity or is governed by laws and we have to abide with the Brown Act. So if we can look into that, probably bring that back for, I think we have a special meeting this week, include that in the agenda item. That would be very important for me personally, because what we're saying in essence is every time the community shows up here and we say we're listening to the community, and then in the other breath, we're like, we're listening to you, but not that part of what you're trying to say. So when community groups are asking this, one thing we didn't have at our town hall, it was great. We had people show up. And we had people show up just because I guess it was the first town hall, they were curious. I don't know what it was, but people showed up. But we cannot count in that every time, especially if the community members are saying, this is what we would like to see. And we keep telling them, but we need to remain independent. And yes, we should not be afraid if we co-sponsor with this community organizations like San Diegans for Justice, Racial Justice Coalition, North County Equity, you name it, that we also open ourselves to other people that want the CLERB to co-sponsor. But one thing that we'll do is whichever organization co-sponsors with the CLERB, even if it's whatever, like Ms. King said, a white supremacist, best believe the community will show up because they want to speak with these people and they want to engage. And we're actually hoping, because if folks remember, we were actually also thinking of approaching the sheriff's department and asking them also to be included. And then, for whatever reason, they were not able to join. The main goal for the town halls is to, one, validate community members, let them know that at the end of the day, we are a community oversight of law enforcement, and the people that we're trying to be the ones overseeing impartially the community standpoint, because we are not, any law enforcement that I know on here is retired. So I don't know of any active law enforcement. That's exactly what I mean. It's validating the community, understanding that they have put in a lot of work. And I don't think if we let an organization co-host and if we have a flyer, that it will take away our independence. Because at the end of the day, when we are in closed session and making those tough decisions, the community is not there with us. And in that moment, it's left to us to make that decision.
Thank you, Mr. Mangos. I'd like to remind everyone that we're talking about reviewing reports. So obviously we would want the authors of those reports to comment, but, and they would definitely be part of listed on our agenda. However, other organizations would be treated and should be treated like members of the public. And again, like I said, no one is more important than the other one. But Ms. King, did you have your hand raised?
I just lowered it. Sorry.
Okay. Mr. Parker?
Just wanted to point out to you that there is one request to speak on this topic, and then also there were actually two, but Ms. Sales had to leave, but she wants me to read something into the record. So actually, there are three requests, two requests to speak, and then me read something in the record from Robin Sales.
Okay, could you go ahead and call on those two people and then read Ms. Sales?
Sure. First, we will go to Dr. R. Lee Brown. Dr. Brown.
Unmuted. Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to you. And I attended the last town hall with the Center for Policing Equity, and if you recall, I asked them various questions about their study. And since I have not received a response from them, we have decided to review the CPE study because there's a couple of things in the study that I don't understand, or we don't understand, and it is how can you connect, we're talking about traffic stops or pedestrian stops, and they were combining the traffic pedestrian stops with people who are stopped in jail while they're incarcerated. I don't understand how you could connect the two, and there's other things regarding the methodology. Now, when I say I'm not doing it by myself. I have a person who's volunteered to work with us. One has a master's in data analytics from the University of California, San Diego, and the other has a PhD in methodology from Harvard. And so we're going to take a look at it. I don't know how long we've asked for some data, and we are doing this on behalf of the NAACP's Community Criminal Justice Committee to make sure that we understand what's going on, because I mean, the report is really interesting, and we too do not like racism. We hate racism, even though the Emmett Till bill was just passed this week, anti-lynching bill, is finally going to President Biden's desk for signature. You know, I know we have work to do in this country regarding systemic racism and challenges in that area. But when we go out and we put out a report, and the entire community is listening to the results of that report, and when you ask someone to please provide you with the report's design or the independent variables they used in the report, and the person didn't respond adequately, I think someone needs to review their report. So if any of you could help me get the CPE's report, that would be beautiful. We've asked the Sheriff's Department to provide us with the same data that they provided them with. And with that, I will yield back to you, good people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. And so with that, as our
Miss Vice Chair Delaney, there is
You're
one
right.
more request to speak, and then
my apologies.
That's okay. So thank you, Dr. Brown. Next, we will go to Dr. Fishman. Dr. Fishman, are you there?
Thank you. I wasn't going to speak again, but I did want to add two quick things. So I'm a little concerned about this discussion. First is that the state auditor's report, RJC and EJC are really responsible for it in the same way that CPE did the report. There wasn't going to be a state auditor's report until we put a push and convinced folks like Assembly Member Dr. Keela Weber to push for the auditor. And this was led by folks like Lori Saldana and Dave Myers we work with on this. That's why we feel it's very critical to be a part of this in terms of a co-sponsor. The other thing is with the state auditor's report, if you co-sponsor it or co-host it with us, you don't lose your independence. Obviously, you're mentioned in there. You can either claim what they say or you can refute it. You can obviously respectfully decide what you want to do and be independent. You're speaking for CLERB. If we co-hosted with you, we'd obviously speak on behalf of RJC, and we would give our opinion about the report. And for that matter, the history why the report's even there. Second thing I wanted to share real quickly is I am also, my other hat, I am on the Juvenile Justice Commission for the County of San Diego. I'm governed by the same rules and regulations as you guys. And we have definitely co-hosted events with other organizations, and we run it by the same county council you work with. The other thing to suggest for you, if you have that concern, is there's other models. And I think Buki's advice about talking to other county commissions and boards would be useful. One of the models that's used is a pro-con. So for example, when I was on the CRB for the city of San Diego, we actually had pro-chokehold, con chokehold. The police, we did a debate forum. The police presented, they got equal opportunity to talk about why they used the chokehold. Con, we actually brought in a national expert from RJC to give the reason why the chokehold should be banned. And in that sense, the CRB kept their independence. So there is definitely different things that you can do. They're all legal. And you can certainly keep your independence. But I think you're right in terms of something like a state report. I think it's really cut and dry. You can certainly keep your independence if you co-sponsor this, and you obviously can choose what you decide to do with it in terms of your position on it, just like the community organizations. The other thing about it, the co-sponsor, is that I wish actually Paul Parker would speak more to this. Him being on an event with RJC and breaking historic ground and never doing that before actually got many, many people and many organizations to take CLERB way more seriously than they ever had. And that him risking that and putting a good name out there and to share that space with us. And again, not doing something in terms of an independent voice, but simply representing CLERB in a very thoughtful, considerate way, did a lot of work in just that one gathering. It has been done in many years for CLERB in terms of community relations. So we really appreciate that. We're hopefully looking for more opportunities like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ware?
Yes, thank you. That was a great example Mr. Fishman just gave. It's a great example of what I'm talking about. We gave him the platform so his voice can be heard, and we considered it. There you go. If you want to call it a co-sponsor activity, we do it on a regular basis. It wasn't a dialogue, but the format is there to give people their voice and have their voice heard. Thank you.
That is what we're about. So with that, as Chair Youngflesh has said, we've already had this discussion back either last meeting or the meeting before, and we do not do co-sponsors or co-hosts. Our charter may be a little bit different than some of the other organizations. At this point, Ms. Hoffman, do we need another motion, or we've discussed it and just move on? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So at this point, we're not going to co-sponsor. And then the flyer, same. Would that be the same, or do we need more?
You don't need a motion unless any action is being taken.
Okay. Okay, so then I'm going to move on then to
Chair Young,
yes.
I'm sorry, Vice Chair Delaney.
Yes.
I apologize.
That's
Mr.
okay.
Mingos has
Oh, Mr. Mingles, yes.
Regarding the flyer, can somebody explain to me again why the CLERB cannot put out a flyer?
I think if I understand correctly, we want to treat it just like a regular meeting. We don't use flyers for our meetings. The first town hall was very successful. And I think we want to just keep what we normally do based on the success of that town hall meeting, and when we have our county organization that does our press for us. Ms. Pintar?
I still have, I wasn't done. I was
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Mr.
So at this point, I'm going to let it go, but the board will just have to experience. So that was the first town hall ever. And a lot of folks, I dare say, came out of curiosity. So at this point, I'm just going to let, especially with publicity, I'm just going to let at this point, you know, whatever the majority of the board decide, go. But I wouldn't count on a regular show if we don't try to reach everybody, because folks will find in time that folks have a very short attention span when it comes to organizing. So at this point, I'll just leave that alone.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Domingos. And I do apologize. I didn't realize you weren't through. Ms. Pintar?
I was just going to mention that I didn't, I think that that was the first time for the town hall, was the first time I'd seen the county's information department, or I don't know what the title is, information officer had put together, put out a press release about the town hall. I don't believe that is something that's done for the regular meetings. I was just wondering if we could maybe work with the county's PIO to, you know, the press release document that was circulated could be a flyer. It could also probably be disseminated more broadly, and I'd be happy if Paul thinks it's appropriate to work with the county's PO to make sure that our next town hall is publicized in a way that generates more interest and makes sure more people are aware of it.
Thank you, Ms. Pintar. Mr. Parker?
To Ms. Pintar's point, yeah, I worked with the county communications office on that press release, and they're aware, and they've been very willing to work with me on that, and they're open to however best to get the word out to as many different entities and folks and community members as possible. So that was the plan anyway, moving forward, to your point. Secondly, before we move on, Vice Chair Delaney, please don't forget, I forgot to let you know, I do have that comment to read into the records in reference to this topic.
Correct. Could you do that now?
Sure. This is from Robin Sales. I want to appreciate the current CLERB and Paul Parker for changing the direction of this body and for considering the adoption of the recommendations of the Joint Legislative Audit Committee, the CPE, and the report from Dr. Fairley. All of these give specific input for making this board more relevant and hopefully saving lives. The RJC, EJC, and their allied organizations have worked tirelessly for over 15 months to engage members of the community personally impacted by police brutality or indifference. We encourage and support them in their quest for justice, which begins by holding the San Diego Sheriff's Department accountable for the disregard for human lives, particularly of Black and Brown residents of San Diego County. As was the case at your last town hall, all the community input came from activists and professionals. We did not hear the voices of family members who are wary of not being heard by elected officials and have to seek solace from caring community activists. I implore you to co-host the town hall on March 22nd with our organization. Then you will hear from family members directly impacted by your findings and recommendations. Thank you, and I hope you will find a way to make this happen. And that concludes the comments.
Thank you. And just for the record, I hope that family members do attend. We definitely want to hear from them.
Well, if I may, to that point, we send what we are beginning to do in reference to family members. Back before, we didn't reach out to family members. Again, we just didn't do it. But we have been, and I think you'll see that the current cases involving a death, we have been in contact with family members. So since they do get communication from us, since they get notices about our meetings, hearing notices, final notices, there is nothing to say that in a trauma-informed fashion that we advise them of what we're doing. And if they do want to represent at a town hall talking about the deaths in custody that may have impacted, or obviously have impacted their loved ones. So we have that ability to do so. We have folks on staff who have interacted with literally thousands of folks who have lost loved ones, hundreds who have lost loved ones at the hands of or in the course of being in custody. So we can, if there's a concern for the interaction with family members to advise them of such, we can be the point people on that for our respective town halls and meetings. Just throwing that out there.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. I think that that's really important. Mr. Ware?
No, I was just going to add to what Mr. Parker said, because I am a family member of a loved one who was murdered in our county. And I really appreciate all of the professional organizations that supported us during that trying time. But my family, and I know everybody's not like our family, but if we feel the need to come to a town hall, those organizations that supported us during that time will encourage us to do that. And they will hold our hand and get us there, but they will encourage us to come. And so I appreciate what the organizations are doing with the families, but one way or the other, we need to get our families together because we're all going to support them, just like we've been supported during this whole process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ware. Okay, with that, we'll go down to finalize CLERB Town Hall in custody deaths. Before we get started on that, for those that don't know, CLERB had commissioned a very comprehensive study of deaths in custody that will be released, and we will be reviewing it at our next meeting. And we do have an ad hoc committee for in custody deaths. So with that, Mr. Parker, did you want to say anything, or do you want to move on and discuss it more when we get to the updates on the unfinished business?
Vice Chair Delaney, you just said basically the whole point of finalizing this CLERB Town Hall for the in custody deaths. I believe that we have selected, and we've already put out there verbally that the in custody death town hall will be March 22nd. Want to confirm that with CLERB, but also to, as you just said, as was brought up by some board members, that there is that independent analysis that we have commissioned, and that will be presented at the April 12th. We obviously be presented before that to the public, probably the week before, the end of the week before our April 12th meeting, so that also is going to pertain to in custody deaths, the data surrounding that. So the thought was we can move forward, obviously, and finalize the town hall for March 22nd pertaining to the Joint Legislative Audit Committee report. And then for CLERB to consider if they want to do a town hall or how they want to incorporate the Analytica Consulting in custody death report that we commissioned starting last February. If you want to do two different town halls, one about the, like I said, about the audit committee report, and then another one in reference to the in custody death report, or wait and put them all together. I think that was the concern that had come up when talking individually with some folks, and that's why it's on the agenda, so that this board can decide moving forward. Are we moving forward? Yes, with a March 22nd town hall for the JLAC report, and if so, are we going to do I mean, that's really the purpose, to finalize that town hall and what it will entail, and if there's a appetite on this board's part to wait until the other report is done and do them all together, or whatever this board wants. But those were the concerns expressed, so that's why it's on the agenda, and I'll turn it back to you, Vice Chair Delaney.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Ms. Hoffman, is it possible for us, since this is kind of part and parcel of the update in the in custody death data review subcommittee, could we continue that to 8D, or do we need to discuss it and vote if necessary on new business?
Sorry, I'm just looking at the agenda description. Yeah, it could be handled now or during that other item.
Okay, how about we hold on that and then we continue it as we discuss it in 8D. Would that be okay with everyone? Bonnie, did you have your hand raised?
I did, but now that you said we're going to discuss it in 8D, I'm going to lower my hand.
Okay, all right. If there aren't any other concerns, is there any members of the public that you can see, Mr. Parker, that want to?
I have received no requests and I see none.
Okay, so we will move on to unfinished business then. This is the update of authority of executive officer to county staff. Mr. Parker?
At this point, there has been a bill presented, Assembly Bill 2557, by an Assemblyperson Banta, in reference to this very topic, to increase transparency and civilian oversight of peace officers and custodial officers, and specifically talks about overturning the Copley Press decision that made a lot of what we do kind of confidential, right? So I know that as part of the legislative program, the county is going to look to that. as they move forward for possible supporting of that based on our request to do so. So that's where we are. That's the only thing I can update you on at that point. And that's how this is going to work. If bills come up that look to deal with what we're asking for, then I will be asked whether or not the county should move forward and support that. And that's what we've done thus far. And that's all I have about that topic.
Okay, thank you. And for 8B,
I see Mr. Wilson.
I'm sorry, Mr. Wilson.
What was the assembly bill again? What was the number, please?
2557.
2557. Okay.
Assembly person Bonta, B-O-N-T-A. Okay.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Delaney.
Thank you. Are there any, no other public comments?
I see.
Board comments? Okay. So 8B update, Mr. Parker?
That is something that's actually gaining some traction right now based on, due to the work of Ms. Hoffman. So we hope maybe we'll have an additional, more thorough update next month, but this is being actively worked, that request to expand the jurisdiction. So hopefully we'll have some more update.
That's terrific. Thank you very much. Mr. Wilson, did you have your hand up still, or did you?
No, I just want to make sure I had that number correct.
Okay. All right. 8C would be the update racial disparity and racial profiling subcommittee, and council would like to say a couple of words.
Remind me, is this on the ad hoc issue?
Yes.
Okay. So just generally, there's been more subcommittee activity than in previous years that I've been advising CLERB. So I just wanted to remind the board that an ad hoc committee is intended to be for a limited purpose and a limited duration. If we are seeing that committees are having sort of a long, maybe a task that doesn't have a finite end, we run into the issue that maybe it's no longer an ad hoc committee and it becomes a standing committee. And that's important because there are additional Brown Act requirements that apply for a standing committee. So basically, if it's a standing committee and not ad hoc, it would have to be open to the public and notice, just like any other CLERB meeting would be. So I just wanted to remind the board of that and make sure we're mindful of that as we have discussions about the subcommittee and their purposes.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mingos?
Sure. So when this committee was formed, it took, I think, at least a month before it was even on the agenda, because I was asked by the chair to take it off the agenda, receive training as a new board member, and then I had requested to put it back on the agenda. And all these happened before the CPE report was released and before the in-custody deaths was released, which made my argument for me that yes, indeed, there was really a racial disparity and racial inequity issue. I also remember the day that the committee was formed saying that this issue of racial disparity and racial inequity has been a long-standing issue and that it will need a lot of time to resolve. I would like to make a motion at this point because based on what council just said, to see if we're willing to vote into having this as a standing committee, because obviously an ad hoc committee does have a timeline and it has to be dissolved. So at this point, if folks would like to take this back to our next ad hoc committee meeting to discuss and then present it to the general body, that's fine by me. But at this point, based off of what council just said, I would like to make a motion that we vote to change the ad hoc committee for racial disparities and inequities to a standing committee and make it open to the public, because I believe that the public that we serve deserve that much.
Thank you, Mr. Mingos. Ms. Hoffman?
Yeah, my understanding of Robert's rules is that to establish a standing committee, it would require a resolution. So if your board is amenable to it, I'd suggest if that's the direction that maybe I work with the ad hoc committee to form that resolution and bring it back at the next meeting to make sure we do it correctly.
So to make that happen, does that have to happen at the ad hoc committee meeting, or should we vote to be able to speak about it at the ad hoc committee meeting, what happens now?
I think it's within the jurisdiction of the ad hoc committee to speak about it. And then it can be agendized for the next meeting and bring forward a resolution that we've drafted ahead of time.
Thank you much.
And also I'd like to, my notes here from Chair Youngquist is, my understanding is that the Racial Disparity Committee was to, the purpose was to offer recommendations and suggestions for how to resolve these issues. And has any work been done? Sorry, my computer just went weird. Has there been any progress on that?
Well, as folks have seen in Paul Parker's extensive reports during the last few months or weeks that the ad hoc committee has been in existence, we are, we're talking about the cameras and trying to figure out who's responsible for what. I know that he has sent out various recommendations. I read at least 2 today where they had responded to the chair. But like I said, it has been a long-standing issue. And I do not think, so if this committee is under intense pressure to reach a resolution, it is impossible. It's not what is being asked of us and what the requirements for an ad hoc committee is not doable within the short time frame that this ad hoc committee has. And right now I'm just speaking for myself. When we speak on Wednesday with the ad hoc committee members, then we will decide how we want to move forward. But right now I'm just speaking for myself.
Okay, I guess the question would be, is that the purpose of this committee, it was supposed to be, I'm sorry, Sherry, Ms. Hoffman.
You can finish. Or
okay, so the purpose of the committee was one thing, but it seems like it's maybe doing something else. Mr. Parker, did you want to speak?
I do. And I don't want to overstep the co-chairs, Ms. Domingos and Mr. Ware. I can tell you that having not being a committee member, but being present, obviously, and taking notes and having some input or whatnot as a non-board member, this committee is making great progress. The focus of the committee, the purpose was to come up with a plan to reduce the likelihood of racial disparity, racial profiling, and implicit bias at the San Diego County Sheriff's Department. I can tell you that the town hall, the CPE report that had come out was needed to be discussed, and it needed to be addressed because that was part of some of the things that are going to be put into the plan. So that's number one. Number two, this ad hoc committee is in the process of detailing specific requests that they're going to bring to the CLERB board with hopes that the CLERB board supports those requests and then forward them to the Sheriff's Department for a report back. So I can say as the executive officer that there is progress being made on behalf of that ad hoc committee.
Terrific, thank you. Ms. Hoffman?
Thank you. I just want to clarify, there's no time limit on these committees. So the test is really if there's a purpose for the committee that has an end date. So if there's a work product to be completed at the end. So it's perfectly fine for an ad hoc committee to take the time it needs to achieve its goal. It just, if it no longer has an end, like a logical endpoint, and it's becoming more of an ongoing advisory committee, then it would be more appropriate for it to be a standing committee. But from what I'm hearing, it sounds like there is still this end goal. And if it takes time, that's fine. That by itself doesn't make it a standing committee.
Okay, great. So that way their goal is to do this report, make the suggestions. And if it takes longer than 3 or 4 meetings, that's okay.
Correct. There's no there's no rule that if it's 3 months or a year, it's no longer.
Oh, okay.
That's not the test.
That's wonderful. Mr. Ware?
I had my hand up before Mr. Ware, I believe.
Oh, go ahead, Buki.
So what I understood that was read by council, I just felt this intense pressure that now we needed to come up with solutions to deal with issues that have existed for years. And that 2 reports have just magnified and brought to the surface of what community members have been saying. So that is why I made the comments that I made. And now thinking about it, I would rather, I mean, we will discuss this at the ad hoc committee, But the more I look at it, the more to take off that intense pressure so we can function and function effectively. I would rather that we have this as a standing committee, but as mentioned, I would defer to the other ad hoc committee members, and we'll discuss that tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate your dedication to this. But again, if, you know, as Ms. Hoffman said, there's no pressure to get it done right away. If you need to focus on that one area and get it done correctly and get all that information, you can still function as an ad hoc committee. Appreciate that, Ms. Hoffman. Mr. Ware?
No, I just wanted to add to Ms. Domingos and Mr. Parker. No, there is no pressure. We're not feeling any pressure. Our charge was to come up with a plan. The charge wasn't to come up with a quick plan. So we're going to do it the right way. And so as council has mentioned, if it takes a little longer than maybe the board at that time thought it was going to take, then so be it, because we're going to do it the right way. Thank you.
And thank you for doing that. Appreciate that. Mr. Parker, did you have your hand up again?
No, I forgot to take it down.
Okay. Is there any members of the public?
There are none.
Okay. All right. So now D will be update in custody death data review. So as I mentioned earlier, CLERB did commission, and this is going to be an excellent report. How does the board want to handle that? Shall we have a in custody death review and then town hall with and wait and have that one, or what is your pleasure? Mr. Parker, did you want to speak on anything?
No, I think the only thing that I would say is having dealt with Analytica Consulting every Friday for the last 4 months, I know that their report is their draft report is just about completed. They plan to have that to me by the first week in April, as I said earlier, and my plan is to put it on the agenda for April 12th. And I'm sure that will lead to much discussion. So that's really all I have to say, is that it is coming. There is an end date for this subcommittee. You folks, the subcommittee members, will be getting, actually, you've already received it, right?
Right.
And so we're going to be meeting next week to discuss it, so that then we can bring it to the full CLERB when the final version is done in the beginning of April. That's really all I have to say is about the update for that subcommittee.
Ms. Domingos?
I just need clarification for the town halls. So both dates for the town halls actually stemmed from the ad hoc committee that I co-chair with Mr. Ware. So I'm not quite understanding what the message is. Does this mean that the ad hoc committee that was originally for the in custody deaths that was formed through the CLERB will be the ones spearheading the town hall on the 22nd, or did I completely misunderstand that?
No, we can't spearhead it on the 22nd because we won't have the report yet. So the question was, do we have two town halls, the one on the 22nd, and then after we get our report from Analytica, to have another town hall? Or do we want to postpone the 22nd and take that back up in April sometime, or whenever the board wants? I'm just opening it up for comments from the board.
Thank you for clarifying.
Sure. Bonnie?
I think that if, we're, why reinvent the wheel? Let's just do one town hall on in custody death.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
Okay. I think it's important that since it is our study that we commissioned, might be very helpful. What other, Bonnie, are you saying though that we should postpone the 22nd and then reschedule once we've reviewed the Analytica report?
Well, I think the Analytica report should be next to the in custody death report that was the other report that's being done. I think they should be done at the same town hall. That's my opinion. It's just my opinion.
Okay. Mr. Ware?
Yes, so whenever we decide to do the town hall, is the in custody ad hoc committee going to spearhead that event? Is that what we're saying?
I guess, I mean, we're asking that.
Oh, okay. Well,
What does the board want to do?
if you started the work, because I don't want to speak for my my ad hoc committee. We would love to do something like this, but if you guys have already started it, we'll support you in your work.
Okay. Was that a motion? Oh, Bonnie, I'll back to you in just a second, Mr. Ware.
I agree with Mr. Ware that the in custody death, which I was a part of for a while, and I'm sorry I'm not anymore, but I agree that they should spearhead the town hall.
Okay. Is that in the form of a motion that you want to make?
I move that the in custody death subcommittee spearhead the town hall for the in custody death report from Analytica and the other agency.
Okay. Is there a second on that? No second?
I just have an issue with that motion, and let me tell y'all why.
Okay.
So not too long ago, CLERB wasn't even thinking about doing their own town hall. Then came the ad hoc committee for racial disparities and racial inequities, and we have our very first successful town hall. And the main reason why we actually pushed for the 22nd is basically one thing. And this is why we did not wait to do the CPE report with the in custody death report, the state audit. The main reason was the main push for the state audit did not come from a legal entity. It was community driven. And we wanted to give community members that space and to validate them that, hey, we hear you, come and speak. This report has been released. And I love the fact that Paul sent out a beautiful response, like timely. But if we now say, okay, let's postpone this, it's like having people hurry up and wait. That's what this is. Because we had already voted on having, if my memory serves me correctly, a second town hall. So we actually had this whole plan of the first one for the CPE and the second one for this one, for the statewide audit. I believe that should remain clean and untouched. And I don't think this is stepping on the toes of the ad hoc committee that has been in existence, because the one that was commissioned internally, I believe by CLERB, can still happen. But the statewide audit is actually, my opinion, a huge deal, because if folks didn't show up and if family members didn't have the courage, and if Dr. Kila Weber wasn't brave enough to make that proposal and push for it, it would never have happened. And it would still be a bunch of, sorry for my terminology, but a bunch of angry people of color saying that this is happening when we don't actually have the data. So that's the reason why I think that we should keep the one on the 22nd whole, and then move with the one for the committee that is responsible for in custody deaths. Because as we have seen, sure, there is in custody deaths as we see, but there is also a huge racial disparity, which kind of, it marries or mixes and mingles with the ad hoc committee for the in custody deaths and the racial disparity and equities. If anything, I would say, I don't know if it's legally possible, But if both committees can come together and do this town hall, because we have folks dying, that's factual, but there's also a racial disparity, and that's factual.
Thank you, Mr. Mingus. I appreciate that. I think one is our in-house report that it's CLERB's report. The other one is a state report. And I think we need to make sure that we understand that. As far as the two committees, ad hoc committees coming together, we would still have to wait because the report is not going to be released to us until our April meeting. So again, we have a motion on the table here. Mr. Ware, did you have your hand up? Sherry, Ms. Hoffman, sorry.
That's okay. In case this weighs on the board's decision, I just wanted to point out that because there will be more than 30 days between Thursday's special meeting and the April meeting, your board will need another special meeting to continue the teleconferencing.
That's right.
If you have the town hall on the 22nd, we can add that to that agenda. But if not, there will need to be another special meeting if you want to continue teleconferencing.
Are you
Just a minor point, but I want to make sure that's not lost.
So wait a minute. So if our meeting on Thursday, we agree to teleconferencing, we can also teleconference or vote to teleconference for the town hall special meeting as well?
I
Or
don't know
no?
if I followed that. So the finding has to be made every 30 days.
Right.
So this Thursday is day 30, which is why we need to do the special meeting. But our April
And then
meeting is more than
our
30
regular
days.
meeting. Ah,
So there would need to, at some point this month, if your board wants to continue the teleconference meetings, there would need to be another special meeting. And my thought was we could add that to the agenda on the 22nd if there's going to be a town hall.
Oh, I
If there
see.
isn't, I just want you to be aware that we'll need another special meeting then.
so this Thursday's special meeting would be for the town hall meeting.
That's one way to look at it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And then we would have to have another meeting, special meeting for our regular April meeting.
Correct.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then we'd have to have another special meeting if we had another town hall special meeting.
It just, the findings need to be made every 30 days to continue it. It's just an ongoing thing. It just gets complicated when the CLERB meetings are more than 30 days apart.
Okay. Ms. Kank?
I'm going to withdraw my motion.
Okay. Okay, so she's able to withdraw her motion, Ms. Hoffman?
There was no second, so yes.
Okay, all right. So we're back to the in custody death. Mr. Wilson?
I move we have our meeting on the 22nd and then have our analytical report.
You're breaking up.
Have our analytical report town hall meeting in April as a wrap up. So 22nd and then another March, continue with the state audit town hall and then have in April a Analytica in custody death town hall.
Okay.
So moved.
And the in custody, the 22nd would be spearheaded by the ad hoc committee? Or is that part of your motion?
Yeah, the 22nd would be spearheaded by the racial disparity ad hoc committee.
Okay. Okay, is there a second on that?
I second that.
Yeah. Okay. We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Okay. Pastor Spriggs, are you there?
Here.
We need your roll call.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we have a motion to have the 22nd town hall, special meeting town hall, and then have another town hall in April for the Analytica.
Okay. Ready for the to vote?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Eileen Delaney,
Yes.
Pastor Robert Schrader Jr., yes. Buki Domingos,
Yes.
Nadia Keen Ayub,
Yes.
Bonnie Kink,
Yes.
Marianne Pintar,
Yes.
Tim Ware. Tim,
No, I apologize.
okay.
Ms. Delaney, can you clarify what we're saying yes to?
Yeah, we are saying yes, that there will be a town hall special meeting on March 22nd
Okay,
to go over the ad hoc committee's report for that report, the justice report, and
State
then
audit, state audit, state audit.
state audit, I'm sorry, yeah. And
okay,
then, sorry.
okay, yes.
And
yes.
then, but the next part of it is, and then we will have also a town hall in April as a conclusion with our analytic report.
Okay, great. Yes, Pat?
Sorry, I misspoke there.
Okay. And G.I. Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, motion carries. All right. All right, my gosh. Number 9, board member comments.
I think we're all.
Are we commented out? All right. Hearing none. Number 10 is our sheriff's and probation liaison query. Do we have any questions? Welcome, Sheriff's Department and Probation Department. Thank you for being here. I know it's been a long meeting. We appreciate Lieutenant Craig and Sergeant Bremen. And I don't see.
They're here. They're here supervising.
My hand's raised, Eileen.
Okay. Ms. Pintera?
I just wanted to thank the Sheriff's Department for the updated camera policy. There was the changes that were made are important. Having the sworn officers be responsible for logging for checking to see if the cameras are working and for logging it. That's new and it's important. As you heard, we're all very interested in making sure that the Sheriff's Department has the technology it needs to capture good video and to be able to do their jobs. And so I just wanted to thank you for updating that policy.
And I'd like to thank them for the BWC in our detention center for facilities. That'll be good for all of us. So thank you guys for that. Is there anything? Oh, Marianne, did you have Ms. Pintar? Did you have something else? Okay.
Vice Chair Delaney, it looks like Lieutenant Craig and Sergeant
Yeah.
Bremen are here.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Lieutenant Craig, Sergeant Bremen, would you like to make any comments?
I'll speak and then I can turn it over to Sergeant Bremen.
Sure.
I'm not sure if she has anything more, but thank you for those comments. Excuse me. I just wanted to let the board and all of the attendees know that I will be retiring at the end of the month. I have over 32 years with the county and 26 years specifically with the Sheriff's Department. And I have been very honored to be a part of this department, and it is very, very tough to leave. I'm sure all of you have jobs or dedicated events that you've been involved in, and it's tough to leave. But I want you all to know that our department is made up of really great, hardworking, dedicated people who are also your neighbors, coaches, relatives, and friends. And I want you to know that just remember that there's no perfect government entity, no perfect private business, or even person for that matter. So, and changes take time, and I can tell you that the department takes your recommendations seriously. And I appreciate all the CLERB members, Mr. Parker, and the investigators for all of your hard work and dedication to the oversight duties that you have. It's not easy, and I understand that. I just also want to remind you that if you would like to do a ride along to give you a firsthand experience of something that you have not done before, please contact Mr. Parker. I think we've offered this last month. Contact Mr. Parker and let him know you're interested, because I think that this could assist you with some of your investigations and your reviews of those investigations. And as I leave, Lieutenant Ted Greenewald will be taking my place. And he is going to continue and even improve on the great relationship between our department and CLERB. And I know that Mr. Parker was able to meet Lieutenant Greenwald, and I'm sure you all will too as time progresses. And I wish you all the best with all you do. Thank
And
you.
Lieutenant Craig, we wish you all the best as well in your new life activities, and hope it's joyful, and appreciate it. And yes, I'd like to reschedule as well. My last ride-along was scheduled for Friday the 13th, the day that we went into lockdown.
Oh,
So yeah, so I'm looking forward to rescheduling. So thank you, and please enjoy your life. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you so much.
Mr. Parker?
I believe Mr. Ware might have had his hand up first.
Oh.
Oh, actually,
right.
his hand went away. So.
His hand went.
Well, now
Oh,
it's
no,
back.
there it is.
He gave up his position.
No,
So I'll just
you
say
said
that.
it.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you said it, Mr. Delaney. Thank you. I just want to say congratulations to LT and thanks for the service.
Thank you very much.
And what I'd like to say, I'd like to echo Mr. Ware's comments. I mean, as the executive officer of CLERB, I'm not going to lie, it's always it's kind of nerve-wracking when a new lieutenant comes in charge of Division of Inspectional Services, or when a new sergeant comes in. It's like, oh, you know, how are they going to be? Are they going to be responsive? Are they going to be open? Are they going to be committed to transparency and accountability and having a collaborative relationship? And I can tell you, hands down, that Lieutenant Craig has done just that. And I think that needs to be acknowledged, because this is a very difficult time, a very trying time for the community and for CLERB as CLERB is growing and the community is facing the issues it's facing, long-standing issues. So I think that the Lieutenant Craig that we've had over the last, well, it's been almost a year, I guess, at least a year, right? During these trying times has resulted in the transparency, a lot of the transparency you're seeing. So I think that needs to be acknowledged. So thank you, Lieutenant, and my best to you.
Thank you very much. And I'll be honest with you, the department, I mean, I don't make all the decisions, so the department gets a lot of credit. And I know my team here in the Division of Inspectional Services gets a lot of credit as well. So, but thank you for understanding and realizing that we are really trying to do everything we can. It takes a lot to make changes in a big agency like this. And I think we're definitely headed in the right direction. And I think that that's not going to stop.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Sergeant Bruman, how are you going to top that?
Yeah, I really don't have anything to add, actually. Lieutenant Craig will definitely be missed, but we will still be in good hands. I really don't have much to say different than what she did. You know, we are definitely have a good relationship with CLERB, and I think that moving forward, you know, we are working on being better transparent, as I know CLERB is doing as well. So I think we have good things in place, and I look forward to any inquiries that you may have.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And with that, this Mr. Parker?
I don't know if it's appropriate, but I'd like to put Brian Barnum on the spot right now if he's here with us. I think there may be some changes at the probation department as far as staffing, or at least positions, or at least acting roles. So with that, Brian Barnum, I'm putting you on a spot. If you could, would you be willing to update the clerk? And you're muted, sir.
You would think after 2 years that we would all get in the habit of muting ourselves, but sorry. You put me on the spot, so you got me off guard. Good evening, everybody. Yes, as a matter of fact, the department has gone through a lot of changes. As we announced last month, we have a new chief, Tanika Nelson, and currently, as I'm sure everybody is aware, March is a popular time for people to retire due to COLA and stuff like that, especially this year, given that it's a rather high COLA. So people are retiring that are fortunate enough to have enough time with the department. So therefore, we've lost a lot of our upper management. As a matter of fact, pretty much all the executive team on the juvenile side of the probation department is retiring. So we currently have numerous people that are in acting roles. As a matter of fact, for institutions, we have an acting deputy chief. His name's Dave Drallman. Over the previously, it was Alex Armenio. He retired earlier this year. Then we also have Lisa Son, who's going to be retiring later on this month. So we have an acting deputy chief there, who is Irene Lilly. who actually used to be my boss. She's over there acting. And then we also have Gonzalo Mendez, who left the adult side in the deputy chief position. So now we have an acting deputy chief with Jason Druxman. And how this trickles down is now there's numerous, I won't bore you with all the details regarding the 5 acting division chiefs, but I'm actually currently an acting division chief, has been replaced Irene Lilly. So right now, Supervisor Brian Berry is the sole supervisor of backgrounds and internal affairs. But given that he's new to the position, I'm trying to assist him in the transition. I can tell you that interviews are taking place this week for the deputy chief's positions. They're taking place next week for the division chief positions. The goal is to have permanent people in place as quickly as possible so that we can continue to move forward as the department goes through the changes. So did that sum it up for you, Mr. Parker?
Thank you very much. Sounds
Yes,
like you got a
it is.
lot going on there.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay. And with that, Ms. Hoffman, could you please read us into closed session? And just, how about we take a 10-minute break and meet back in closed session?
Pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, this board will convene into closed session to consider item 11 on tonight's agenda.
Thank you, everyone.